I'm real proud of her, especially with all this pandemic stuff. Like,
Right.
she's taking it like a champ.
Yeah, well, she's got you guys.
We've done everything we can to make it less horrible.
Yeah. She's got you guys, she's got her grandparents. Like, come on. Y'all are like doing it right. Me, I'm just flapping. Like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Well, her grandparents moved
to Kentucky.
Down Kentucky, so no, she doesn't really have them all that much.
I thought they come up. I thought they come up quite a bit.
They do come up with some frequency, like
right.
Every few months, and then we're going down in January. We're going down to Florida for 2 weeks.
Right.
That will be really nice. I'm very much looking forward to that vacation.
Yeah.
And we'll be staying with them for one of those weeks, so she'll get to see them.
Right. That's awesome. All right. I'm just getting a tweet ready, and then we got 3 minutes till we go live. All right, we get the show started.
It'll be fun. I'm glad that I get to do, an interview with you. Mm-hmm. And I look at it as an interview because we're talking about stuff. And
we're talking about the book. We're talking about you. We're talking about gaming. We're talking about being a mom and being a professional. Like, we're hitting everything because the Drunk Tank isn't just about what you sell. It's about who you are. It's a chance for the audience to get to know you.
3 hours as opposed to...
It's a conversation.
Well, I mean, what I did yesterday was like 45 minutes, so...
Yeah, well...
I think it was supposed to be a half hour, but...
That's because you're an amazing person to talk to, so... And you're just an amazing individual, and I love you to death, so there.
Well, I'm really proud of you, too, doing this Drunk Tank and twitching and just moving and all of everything that you've been through.
I'm trying. We're hustling.
I'm like, oh my god, poor Rick.
We've got a lot of plans for the Drunk Tank, Chris and I.
Oh, and poor everybody.
Right.
Bernadette and your kids.
They're adjusting now that we have the fifth wheel and stuff, so...
That makes a big difference.
It's a transition, but we're getting there. What is a good hashtag for, like, writing on tweets? Like author or like horror? What should I use?
Horror or horror community.
Okay.
Might be a good one. I don't know. I'm not real great with Twitter.
Neither am I, as you see.
So, indie author would work if you want to do another one.
Did I not put the right Twitch channel on there? I swear to God, I'm gonna hurt myself. Oh no!
Sometimes put thriller in there too.
Right.
That's what I write. I write horror/thriller. They're so similar.
Right.
So
the tweet did not work. I got to rewrite it. God fucking damn it! So unprofessional, Doc. So unprofessional. Spelled my own Twitch channel wrong. There we go.
I can't. Yeah. Give me a second.
Yep.
Well, you don't have to give me anything. You do what you need to do.
Yep. You're muted, by the way. I know it's the pre-show, Habbo. We're gonna start in a minute. We're gonna start in like a minute when she gets back. We're gonna roll everything. This is just a pre-show, Hab. We had to get some shit dialed in, so. Yeah, no, we're good. We mostly bullshit between the pre-show. All right, Nikki, I'm gonna bring everybody in on stream, and then so your camera's not gonna be up, and then I'm gonna talk about what the show is today. We'll run the intro video, and then I'll bring your camera up for you. All right. All right, so I got to run the stinger. All right, here we go.
Welcome to the drunk tank, take a shot and much thanks for you coming out tonight. Have a seat and come in, yeah. Now turn the lights down low. Drinks are in the back, we're about to start the show. Okay, landed a kilt in the land of the free. Coming together to spread all the peace. There's more to the story than you'll ever see. Hear out both sides before you disagree. Some of it's funny and some of it's deep. Open your mind and I can guarantee that we will leave you on the edge of your seats. Now over to Docs and the man Chris you see, okay.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Drunk Tank. I am DoxRyan, and as you see, I'm all alone, at least for the moment. Unfortunately, Chris, who normally joins me, my brother from Scotland, had a personal mental health issue he had to deal with, so we're letting him take the day off and do his thing. I'm going to hold it down with my guest, who I'm going to bring in here shortly in a minute. Just figured I'd kind of give you guys a heads up. Today we are talking to one of my favorite people in the entire world. She's a really good friend of mine, known her for like 22 years, and it should be an interesting conversation. She's a self-published author, first novel. She's a mom. She's a gamer. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. So like I said, just wanted to come on before I bring her on, kind of give you a disclaimer, let you know why Chris isn't with me, and that we're holding down the fort for him so he can handle his business. We love you, brother. Do what you got to do. We got you covered. Right now, for those of you that are hanging out with us, we're going to roll the intro video, and then I'm going to bring on my guest / co-host for the next 3 hours. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm kind of nervous because she's like amazing, and I'm like a schmuck. So here we go.
That stupid, rotted old barn in backwoods Maine starts out as just another place to feed my best friend's insatiable ghost hunting habit. Until I'm inexplicably lost for the first time in emotions that aren't mine. An animalistic fear that never really leaves me. On some level, that's smart. I should be afraid, especially when people's
You
moods
won't hear
start
it unless
swinging
you're
at my
watching the
whim.
stream, Nikki.
But you know, it's also kind of
I'll send you the
fun,
video after the show.
if you don't count the heart attacks, fatal job promotions, and Choco Tacos with criminally wasted potential left in my wake. Then there's the delicious bit of trouble from down the way. He's emotionally silent, but breaks the sound barrier on my other 5 senses. I can't affect what I can't feel, so he's safe, right? Am I? The pressure of keeping everyone's emotions at bay is cracking my jury-rigged mental wall into a Cheshire grin. The question is, whose grin is it? Mine, yours, or something curiously sinister? As reality twists into a labyrinthian spiral, each step I take brings a little more tragedy and a little less me. I'll have to double back on my fading footprints and find what passes for the truth before my sixth sense becomes my only sense.
All right. Hey, everybody, please welcome to the show, Nikki DeKeuster, and a good friend of mine. What's up, Nikki? You're muted, Nikki. You got to unmute. Take your time. You're good. Work through it. There you go. I can hear you now.
Okay.
I can hear
have
you
no
now.
idea how that happened.
There's
Sorry about that.
No worries.
There's
Hey,
a button on here, but I didn't
that's all right.
think I pressed it.
You're good. All right,
Hello, everybody.
Yes. Chris made an
Again,
amazing
drunk
intro
too.
video. Yeah, you're good. I got you. Chris made that amazing intro video. I will send you a copy of it through Google Drive, so you can download it and do whatever you need to do.
Yes, thank you, Chris. I hope that you're feeling better today. And I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
So I know you wouldn't have heard the video if you weren't watching the stream, Nikki. But basically, we had a really good friend of ours, a streamer friend of the show. Her name is Habit Actor. She basically did the voiceover narration of the back of your book over the video that Chris made.
That's what I kind of figured. It was probably something like that.
Yep.
So sweet.
So yeah. So Haba crushed it. We love Haba. Haba's great. Shout out to her.
Thank you, Haba.
But welcome to the show. Greetings to everybody in chat. We will address chat as we go through. Just keep it polite and follow the chat rules, and we'll answer questions as we go along.
Hey, I thought this was the drunk tank. Keep it polite.
Well, chat's got to keep it polite. That's different for us. They got to keep it. Yeah, exactly. Because we're the show. They're the audience, and we like to address them. But as long as they keep it shit clean, we'll keep them around. But anyway. I need to introduce you. Everybody, this is Nikki DeKeuster. Everybody, Nikki DeKeuster. First time self-published author, gamer, mom, wife, super chick, amazing. So let's talk about how you been, girl. This is the opening round. How you been? I haven't talked to you in a while.
Well, I'm busy. Obviously, I launched my
Yeah.
book on December 1st,
Yep.
and that's been a whole lot of sort of little tiny fires that you got to put out and start, and so
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking forward to being like after this interview, I get to kind of take a breath,
Right.
you know. But it's been an amazing journey,
Yeah.
which we'll get into, but great week. It's gone very well, lots of support. So I'm very
Yeah.
happy.
So, but besides like the craziness of the book, like how was your week in general? Just was it all just book stuff, or you just like have you had a moment within the chaos to just sort of be like, holy shit, I put a book out? Like,
Um, a little bit. Like, there's
right,
been little moments. This podcast will probably be my first sort of super processing it, I guess.
right. Just let it settle in on you.
Yeah, because it's going to be a bit more casual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I did an
100%.
interview yesterday that not that it was super formal either. It was with my friend David, but
Right.
um, just a different mentality here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's a little
We're-
different, but yeah, we have history, so it's a little more like, hey,
yeah,
what's up? So.
that's what I'm getting at.
But yeah, but no, man, my week was kind of crazy. Like I've been making videos and doing TikTok stuff, doing promo to get you on, and just everything at the farm here was crazy. And I was trying to arrange a bunch of stuff for off stream stuff. So my week has been really good, but it's been like this, like roller coaster, like real busy and then dead. So yeah.
Mhm.
It's been good though. Like my dog is being a butthead today, so I had to kick her out the workshop. Normally she like sleeps like next to me during the show, but she's like being a butthead today.
She was so excited. She could just feel your
Oh,
excitement.
dude, the
Right?
vibe, the vibe today. I got up at like my alarm went off, and I got up and I'm like, all right, I can't be late today. Like other days, I'm like, I'm running behind, But normally we have like our streamer bros on, like they're like, oh, don't worry about it if you're late. But like this, I don't know. There's something about this energy
There's a
in there.
girl in the room.
That's right.
There's
Maybe
a
it is.
girl.
Maybe there's a pretty girl gonna be on the show. I gotta be on my A game. But yeah, no, so yeah, it's been crazy. Like we're just doing our thing. And I know you're doing your thing at home and whatnot. But what do you before I even get into this part, I gotta do the other legal disclaimer. For those of you who are joining us live on Twitch or on the VOD or on audio, this is the Drunk Tank. We are having a few beverages, so you need to make sure you are of legal drinking age in whatever country or city or state or whatever you live in, so that you are not being irresponsible. Also, do not text and drive. Do not drink and drive. Now that the lawyers are satisfied. What are you drinking in that cool-ass clear glass of yours? Gotcha. Got her.
Funny. Actually, this glass is awesome.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna try
it
to
looks
show
cool.
it without spilling it all over my computer.
Oh, nice. That's a cool like design.
Yeah, that's my logo for my publishing company.
Oh, the
And
Phoenix?
it says The Spiral, which is the name of my novel.
Nice,
And
nice.
it's got one of my very early quotes, which says masterful word version of Fantasia. So Brian got
Interesting.
this. Brian got this for me when I was first putting my book out for beta readers.
Mm-hmm.
This was my very first beta readers
Right.
quote on it. So he made me a nice little glass to celebrate, which I thought was very sweet.
That's because he's a good henchman.
This is not alcoholic though.
Yeah, neither am I. I didn't have a chance to run to the store.
However, what else I have,
Ooh, what do you got?
I have some alcohol.
Ooh,
This is some mead, some blackberry mead that my husband
nice.
Brian made.
Nice.
So I was like, that's how I'm gonna roll into the drunk tank.
Right. That's how you're gonna roll. That's how you roll. I got some Vikings blood in my Kraken cup. That's
Right. Clink. Here's
clink.
Rick.
There it is.
I'm sorry, Dox.
Either way, you knew me pre You knew me pre-Twitch.
Whew.
That's some good shit, huh?
Sick. Wake me up.
Apparently. Are we talking about the meat or something else? Lord, I got the vapors. All right, so yeah, I mean that's been my thing, man. So let's get into it. I'm real curious because you talked about little fires that you had to put out or start. You wanna kind of elaborate on that?
Oh, one of the things that happened is so Amazon will lock you out of your book after pre-orders for a little period before it goes live.
Uh-huh.
And not sure what their system is. Something around 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Mine ended up being a little shorter. So I put the book out there. It's getting ARC reviews, which are advanced reader copies. So those
Right.
are the first people who read the book that's in its finished state, and they tell you what they well, they do a review. They don't tell me necessarily. They might
Right.
send me a message, but
Right.
they're the first reviews that you see out on anywhere. The
Mm-hmm.
reviews are left. And so a friend of mine who read it, she was like, "It's great, but just so you know, your little emoticons that you put in there are not showing up in my Kindle version." And
Okay.
I
I
was like,
think
"What the
I
like?"
think mine in the PDF showed up, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, the PDF will be fine. The print
Yeah.
version will be fine. The
Oop, shit, wrong one.
Kindle, any Nook, any like Kobo, anything like that, it's and I discovered this, it's a crapshoot if it'll show up or not.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, I didn't know that, and my formatting software did not tell me this, you know. So I'm like trying to troubleshoot a solution, and she told me this is no fault of her own, but
Mm.
an hour before I got locked out of Amazon.
Oh
So
no.
it was like the clock was ticking on like 52 minutes or
Oh, that's good
something.
shit.
And so I'm like running, trying to get a new version uploaded that,
Right.
isn't going to have the little boxes show up
Mm.
instead of the emoticon. Because there's 3 pages that have some
Yeah.
emoticons in the entire story. So it's not
Right.
like a huge, huge deal, but there's 2 instances where I think it matters to the
Mm.
story that you be able
Yeah.
to see them.
Right.
And so I had to stopgap a solution, and I did. I made a thing. I go to upload it, and it was like 3, 2, 1 locked out.
No. No.
No, yes. So I was like, oh
Oof.
my God, okay. Again, not the end of the world. It's still like a
Right.
good version. It's really not that big a deal. Some people will be able to see it, some won't.
Right.
But then they let me in early. Like, I don't know what their system was, but it was basically December 1st somewhere.
Right.
So all of a sudden I was allowed in, and it was like hours before it was going to be December 1st here.
Mm.
So it wasn't like in Spain time either. So it was just
Mm.
like in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, they decided that it
They were
was
like,
going to be December
Bezos was like,
1st.
"Let her in, it's fine."
So I quick ran in there. I put the new version in,
Mm.
and it was fine. Like there's pre-orders, but nobody that had done a pre-order even got theirs. Like it
Downloaded
didn't
it.
hit
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
time zone until after I did it.
Right.
So it was a very little fire, all things considered. There are definitely worse things that happen,
No.
but um, that's just one example.
Yeah,
So
that sounds like it. It's like, especially when like you got a timed puzzle like that. It's like I gotta get it down. I gotta get it down.
go,
The clock is ticking, and you're like, just please go faster. I can totally see it. I can totally see it. So, what for those of you that are listening, Nikki and I have been friends for what 22 years now, something like that.
something like that.
So there's a familiarity that her and I have, and maybe we'll get into a couple of the drunk stories that we've had together or whatever. But she's a mom and she's a wife and everything. So how has release week been at home, like for you, like as like a mom and a wife, like outside of like the professional, like what's release week been like just in at home for you? Because
Well,
I would imagine, like, if I was doing a release, shit would be crazy here. Like, everybody would be like, "Are you done yet? What else do you got to do?" Like, I couldn't even imagine trying to release a novel worldwide and do all my regular shit. Like, I'm curious to know how the week's been at home.
well, Brian took the week off, and so he took
Oh,
a vacation this week.
nice.
And we didn't necessarily like both get together and coordinate that,
Right,
but it just he happened like he had vacation he had to take before the end of the year,
right.
and he took it this week, and I was like, perfect.
Good hinge.
So
Good
it's
hinge.
yeah, my husband is so supportive
Yeah,
of absolutely everything I have ever done.
that's the brainwashing and the psychotropic drugs you put in his food, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. We won't tell him though.
So, and my daughter, she's 7,
Mm-hmm.
and so she's old enough. She knows
Right.
that this is Mama's week.
Mom's gotta bust it out. Nice.
But I also like I take time with her, and we have snuggles right before going on the show. I'm sitting snuggling, like absorbing her love.
Give me all that juju.
So it is hard though to strike a balance between
Nope.
work, especially as an entrepreneur,
Yep.
and your family.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things I
Family does
find.
have to come first whenever possible, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes there's those things that you just have to do, like when that instance that I said where I had to quick change the emoticons. I was like, Aisling, who's my daughter's name,
Mm,
she's like, I gotta go upstairs and deal with some stuff. Like she's not 2
right.
anymore. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like she's 7, she can handle herself.
Yeah. She can make macaroni and cheese in the microwave if she needs to.
Even she'll be okay if I'm upstairs messing with you know
Mm-hmm.
fiddly stuff is what I call it. It's all the little fiddly behind the scenes stuff that
Right.
you don't know unless you're in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, like for me, I always tell the kids I have live time, and then they're like, "Well, you're not live," but I still have stuff I have to do. I still have to edit a video. I have to edit the audio. I have to do social media stuff. So, and they're all like teenagers, so they go from this phase of we don't want to do anything with you to pay attention to me,
Yeah, only
and
me, only me.
it's like pick one, just pick one, and stay that way. Or like, just
No.
I
Well, they're
can't.
basically like toddlers.
Yeah, it's the second teenagers are the
Teenagers.
second toddler stage. 100%.
I'm so glad that I found that before she gets into that stage because I think it'll help me be more understanding
Yeah, me,
when
nah.
it comes. My main character is a teenager too, so that's at least for right now.
Right.
It's gonna be a long series and
Mhm.
freezing up.
It's
So
fine. It's just a thing. So you mentioned that Amy, the main character, is a teenager. You're clearly not a teenager. What was it like writing? As somebody who has to write a novel, you didn't write adult characters. You wrote a teenager, most teenagers as your characters, but they're not. They don't. How can I put this without being a spoiler or whatever? When I read the book, because you sent me a copy for review and whatnot, you wrote them as teenagers, but there are times where there's a maturity level that speaks beyond teenager, but then there are times where like, oh, that's a teenager. So how did you find that, or what was the process of writing a teenager that was at times a little more beyond their years, but then also like very teenager? Like that must have been tricky as hell.
well, part of it is because she's writing this story
Mm-hmm.
some years after the
Okay.
fact. So the person, Amy, that's writing it to you and telling you the story is not the teenager within the story.
Right.
That makes sense.
No,
Um,
totally.
so it's written in first person, and she'll break the fourth wall sometimes,
Yep.
you know, and she's very aware that this is something that she's letting you know. It's more intimate like that. I don't do it all the time, or she doesn't do it all the time.
Right.
Every now and again, there'll just be a reminder that you're sort of sitting around the fire with her. You found this notebook or whatever form it's in, or in this case, book.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, that cover's dope, by the way.
I love doing that.
You're
Here
like,
are my brain drippings.
right.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that cover was dope when you unveiled it. I was like, holy crap, that's sick. But
Yeah, so in her dialogue within there, I try to keep in mind that she's a teenager.
mm-hmm.
And then her friend Kayla is smart, so
Right.
having hers, and Daniel, who's her love interest, is also very smart.
Not a fan
So,
of Daniel, by the way.
yeah, well,
All right, I made this comparison, right? For those of you that are in chat, we're kind of bouncing around a little bit, and if you're new to the show, that's what we do. But Nikki released a book. It's a horror novel, coming of age story of her main character, Amy. How do you pronounce the last name?
Doreen.
Doreen. Okay, so Amy is a teenager in the book, but as Nikki said, that she's retelling it as an older character, and Amy meets her love interest Daniel, who she feels comfortable with because Amy at some point develops the ability to like feel and manipulate emotions, and Daniel is like a blank. I don't like Daniel. Daniel's toxic. So I made this comparison to Amanda. Amanda and I were discussing it when we were talking about our reviews. Amy and Daniel remind me of like a proto version of like Harley and the Joker relationship. I saw that in their relationship, and I'm like, I don't like him. I don't like him. I don't like him. I don't like him. Not at all.
Well, Joker and Harley are my favorite characters.
Yes, and that's why I think I was able to pick up on it.
There's definitely some bleed over. So I think if you like that dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
you'll probably really dig this story.
I mean,
the first of
go ahead.
9, I should say. So it's the first book in a series of 9.
All right.
I have planned.
9 more gut-wrenching tales of horror.
Yeah, and it's horror. It's also a tragedy, right?
Yeah, all the way.
I've been talking with people about how the genre of this defies definition.
Yeah, it really does. It, like, to me, when I read it, I got a lot more thriller and suspense because a lot of the stuff there's moments of horror, like there's moments of action in it. But for me, reading it from my perspective, it was, I don't want to say a masterclass because
oh, you can say that. That's fine.
fine. It was a masterclass in building suspense and tension because a lot of the book, you're like, I had this like tightness. I was like, as I'm reading it, I'm like, I know something's coming.
Happen.
Right. And it builds and builds, and then you turn a corner, and then what the fuck happens? And then it's back. Like, it just kind of peters out. Like, it's in your face, it's visceral, it's impactful, and then there's a lull again, and you're like, all right, I gotta go retch for a minute, and I'll be back.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you're like, oh, okay, it's a nice scene again. You're like, are we not going to talk about the shit that just happened like 5-10 pages ago? And then it builds again. It's like this really well-timed roller coaster of like this epic build to this really lull where you're like, all right. And then again, it's just these hills of like horror and violence or action. And then it's again back to the build. And I think that's one thing in the book that I personally really enjoyed because I always had that tightness when I was reading it. I'm like, okay, when is she going to do some fucked up shit again? It's so good. And horror isn't my preferred genre. Like, I'll read it if something catches my eye, but I don't go to it. And when I read your book, I kept thinking about it afterwards. I was like, okay, Okay, how did we go from that fucked up situation to this one? And we're trying to dance around spoilers because I don't know if people have read it, but for those of you that are going to read it, and you should read it, and the link to get the book is in the chat, so go to that link. I kept thinking, all right, how do we not address what happened? Like, you address some things, but then it goes back to like good horror doesn't address the horror. You know what I mean? Like shit
Well,
happens, but
and
they're not like, oh, did you see what happened? It kind of goes and builds again, if I make any sense.
well, I think, are you talking more about the end or
Yeah,
just the whole thing?
like in general,
Okay.
the general vibe for me is like I said, that roller coaster. Like there's a tension build, and then there's that drop of like violence or horror or whatever, or in one scene, sex, because there's girl. Ooh, Lord, the vapors. But yeah, you have a really well timed suspense and then burst and then back to the build. And
Yeah, it's
that's what I
important
like.
in a story to be able to breathe.
Right.
Like if it's just constant, bam, 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 there's no ability to process it.
Right.
So that's, I think, maybe what you're getting at a little bit.
Yeah, I'm
But
not yeah, I think so. I'm not very like
although I will say that Amy is a bit of unreliable narrator.
yeah,
So
that vibe I could see that 100%.
it's the kind of story that you have to read between the lines, and because she'll see something, interpret it one way, and then she'll be like, "But wait a second,
Run that
you
back.
know, how'd you get there?" And you can. I strove to make you be able to understand how she
Right.
gets to her conclusion,
Hmm.
but life is gray. It's not black and white,
Yeah, definitely.
and so hopefully you can also see there's multiple viewpoints in anything that goes down or anything that happens in the entire book, right?
Hmm.
Oh, I know that's so vague. It's so hard to promote this without spoilers, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I think if we dip too much in the spoilers, it will, one, people would lose incentive to read it, or it might encourage some people. But I think with your book, a spoiler thing is really difficult because a lot of the really what the fuck scenes would lose their impact if you kind of knew what was going on beforehand, or if you read a spoiler. So I know it's hard, and I know chat's probably like, what exactly are you talking about? But I think it's important to like keep it as spoiler free as possible, because you do have that masterful build, and a lot of those
And it's a
what
mystery,
right.
right? It's a
Yeah, and
mystery too. So
that's
it's
yeah, that's
horror,
exactly what I was
thriller,
trying to get.
mystery, and you don't want that to be spoiled. So like I can say in the beginning, it starts out with Amy and her best friend
Hmm.
Kayla going ghost hunting in an abandoned barn,
Yep.
and she's suddenly struck with the ability to feel emotions. Um, and so it's her dealing with that in the beginning, and is this real? Am I crazy? What's going on? Did something actually happen there? Because they've been
Hmm.
ghost hunting for a long time, and nothing really has ever
Come of
happened.
it, yeah.
And then so it goes through her. She gets overwhelmed by emotions, ends up blacking out, and going to the hospital at one point. And so you start to get other characters involved, like her mother,
Hmm.
and their point of view is to, is she on drugs? Like, what's going on with this?
Yeah, her mom's a piece of work.
Her mother's, yes,
Her mom's definitely a piece of work, and I'm like, oof, yeah.
but her mother also, there's a complicated relationship there,
Right.
right? So she's more domineering and controlling of Amy's life, but also supportive.
Right.
No, she's there at times and not in others, right? So
Hmm.
she's human.
Yeah, and I think that's a really accurate point. Is the the characters in your book are very human. Like, you read a lot of books where like characters are doing shit and they just seem to defy human norms, right? Depending on the genre or whatever. But your characters seem very, very human, very grounded, very like gray, very, very complicated and complex and very kind of bleh, like all humans are. And in a mystery and horror genre, having characters that are believable as humans and having them be as complicated and as gray as your characters are, I think is a strength of the book, because you get drawn in by the characters. And like I was talking to you before stream a little bit. I was like, Kayla is like, to a lot of people that I've talked to, Kayla is really the heart of the book in some ways. Like she's very much a touchstone for people. And I'm not going to say anything, but you know what you did. I'm looking at you.
Well,
But
it is horror.
yeah, it is horror. But I mean, I think
there are horrifying things that happen to these poor characters.
What's that say about you as a person? Let's put on the Freud hat. You like doing horrible things to people. What does that say about you?
Well, I don't know. I blame Scooby-Doo.
What? Why are you going to put that on Shaggy and the gang? Why do you blame Scooby-Doo? Come on now, elaborate. Why do you blame Scooby-Doo?
What do you think back? It's sort of a lot of people's first exposure to scary things, right? And
100%.
I love Scooby-Doo. Although I will say, growing up, did not like to be scared.
I don't like to be scared now.
No, I didn't like scary movies, horror. I mean, I like Scooby-Doo, so there must have been some of that there.
Under the surface.
But I also I don't like being afraid either.
Right.
So I think I wouldn't seek it out, but it sort of followed me my whole life, in a weird way. So like, for example, I had a class in school that was called Creature Connection that I just happened to get into. It was all about horror. Like, all we did was study horror. And I wasn't like a huge horror fan. Although at that point I had read Interview with the Vampire.
Oh, Anne Rice love. Here we go.
Anne Rice is a big influence. So you mentioned sex before, right?
Right.
And
because there's it's in the book.
yeah, there's a couple of very steamy scenes, and I don't skimp on details, but it's not an erotica book either.
No, it's not. Definitely not with the one scene, girl. Ooh, You're wrong for that one. The knife play scene.
The one at the end.
Yeah, that one. I read that and I was like, I need to call your mama.
Again, I'll remind people it's horror, right? And so it's something, one of the overarching themes of this book and this series, and something that when I created Amy I wanted to explore, is what is love?
Okay.
What does love look like in its different forms? And so you'll see that with Kayla, you'll see that with Daniel, you'll see that with her mother. What lengths do we go to for love? And what grip does it have over us? What does it mean? And with Amy, with her ability to feel emotions as deeply as she does, there's supernatural elements to this that I was able to amp up and play with and dive into the darkness of. So I'm taking something, sex, that is usually, a beautiful, wonderful thing. I mean, it can get down dirty and kinky too.
Well, I mean,
but like,
go ahead.
And I explore all the different facets of it. There's a light side, and then there's there are darker places with it.
Right.
But it's all in service of the story.
Yeah, that I would agree that you accomplished that for sure.
Like, so Amy and Daniel's the love interest.
We don't like Daniel. I'm Team Kayla.
You're Team Kayla.
100%.
Like, sex is central to their dynamic.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
It's a big part of how they work together.
Right.
And so there are points where it really matters. So, like, this is not the kind of book where you can skim the sex scenes.
Right.
They actually matter to the story.
Yeah, because
There's things,
certain things come out during those scenes, and things develop. So you can't,
yeah,
like you said, you can't skim it, because if you did later on in the story, you'd be like, wait, when, how did that, what, huh? How did that, wait. So yeah, I agree. Can't skim them.
there is. Um, that's different too, I think. You don't see that a whole lot, where the actual act matters. It's I don't I spend as much time as I need to. I don't feel like there's gratuitous sex in this.
Right.
Is it needed for the scene? Does it get across the point? Then we go there. If not, I fade. There's several times I fade to black
Right.
because,
Yeah.
as I said, they have a very hot and heavy dynamic, and that's the characters.
Yeah. 100%. And I
No,
think you handled that really well in the way you did that. Because
I
like you
got
said,
that.
it's
Oh,
not
go ahead.
gratuitous, but it is graphic, and there's a difference. That distinction often gets lost in
Yes.
shows and in novels, because let's face it, sex sells. You throw a body on there and they start getting hot and heavy, people are gonna put their eyes on it, right? So a lot of times, um, people use sex cheaply to keep your interest. And with the way you did the book, it's graphic and important, but not gratuitous. Like you said, there are several times where you fade to black because that's the relationship. But in the times where it is necessary and in service of the story, it is very graphic. It is well written, and I don't ever feel like it went to, like you said, it's not erotica. It's erotic, and
Yeah,
it's
I
well
wrote it.
written.
No, it's again, you're getting down into Amy's head.
Right.
No, and so that was actually somewhat of a challenge to be able to write some of these scenes,
Why?
uh, you know, and keep my wits about me while she's losing hers.
Oh, okay.
You, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that goes for this scene and many others that get to be a crescendo, shall we
Mhm.
say. So, yeah, the sex angle, I don't know. We live in America, at least, in a very prudish society in a lot of ways.
In a
We have
lot
a
of ways,
very
yeah.
polarized view of sex.
Mhm.
And one thing I'm actually grateful for is somehow or another, I view it as another thing in life. Like,
Yes, it's a thing.
so I'll have the graphic depictions of the sex, but I also have graphic depictions of other things. Know what I mean? So like,
Oh, yeah. Oh, I
there are
do.
some graphically gory things
Mhm.
in this book. That I go into, and some graphically fun things. Like there's
Yes, very
times when
much
you
so.
go down, and that has to be said too. There's a lot of fun in this story. It's not just all horror. In
No,
fact,
yeah.
I think you need the light.
Well,
There's a
that's
quote. Oh,
I
go
referenced
ahead.
that earlier. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I referenced that earlier because you have this build, and not only is the build tension filled, it also has those fun moments too, because you do need those moments of levity that you're discussing. Because if you didn't have those moments, like
Be too
the
dark.
yeah,
You
and the
lose
one
your
scene
sense
that you'd lose your sense of what purpose, maybe.
of purpose in life if you just get so depressed.
Existential dread.
You lose your connection to the characters.
Yeah.
They give so much, and I've had this happen in other stories that I've read where too much bad stuff happens to them. It's all so dark, and you disconnect.
Right.
As a reader, you're like, it's harder to get in because you're like, oh, another bad thing, and I can't emotionally connect to this character as well. But
Right.
if you've seen them in their lightest moments, and that's where the sex is also important.
Right.
So you've seen how intimate these two characters get. So later, when one or the other is dangling off a cliff,
Right.
you care. You understand why the characters care.
The
You know,
stakes.
you the stakes are higher.
Right.
So for me, like I mentioned Anne Rice earlier,
Mhm.
and she, in many ways, paved the road for me. She is the queen of horror.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue that.
And she has sex in her books. And it's
Lots of it.
integral to the plot.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the Witching Hour series.
Yeah, I read a little bit of that, not much, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It gets salacious. Like, some of her stuff gets super salacious, but, like, it's necessary to understand the connection between all of these characters in her instance too. And that doesn't, downplay the horror elements. In fact, I think it upgrades it. And in the horror genre in general, there's like a life-death dynamic that happens, right? And you'll see this in even slasher films, right? Where the teenagers are running off to have sex and then Jason goes and kills them.
Right. 100%.
So it's the same sort of thing here. And I hope that won't dissuade people from reading it and really like getting down into the moments with Amy, because there is purpose to it. You can skim it too, and it, I guess, won't be the end of the world,
but you'll miss something.
You'll be a bit more lost. Right.
Yeah. I don't think and we're talking about love in all its phases, and sex is definitely one of those phases of love. I don't think the way that you have done like the sex scenes that are integral to the story and move the story forward would be a turnoff for anybody. I think with them, it's an opportunity to look at it in a different way and kind of like maybe look at, I don't want to say like a self-examination, but maybe like, okay, why is this person into that, or why is it this way, or why is it that way? It's maybe a jumping off point to maybe a conversation with like your partner. You know what I mean? In some ways.
I mean, in horror in general, one of the reasons I love the genre is because it's so open to anything can happen, right?
Right.
And so if you're under the horror umbrella, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's constant gore. And there is some gore in this, but it's not a focus, right? And it's more of a psychological horror than anything.
Right. Chris took some time out to message me. He says, it's a book where you need to read the entire thing to come full circle. There are moments in the beginning where you feel Amy's perceptions / choices are wild, but later on you have the, oh, I get it moment. And I think that's a really good way to sort of sum up, like you were saying, Amy as an unreliable narrator, kind of.
Yeah. I would say that I've had several people at this point tell me that they rereading it or have reread it, and when they've reread it, it's another book because of that unreliable narration.
Yeah, it reads different a second time, for sure. For sure.
And just because there's things that are revealed at the end that really change so much of the perspective. Because, as I said earlier, somebody will say something and you'll be like, wait, did they just say that? And Amy, how is Amy taking it? What? Almost like always look on the bright side of life.
Right.
There's an element of how we deal with trauma, right? And the bad things that happen, and horror will take you through that. That's one of the beautiful things about it, I think, is that you can see how other people deal with these horrible things and how they are able to get through it. But for better or worse, Amy's journey in a lot of ways is just beginning at the end of this book.
Yeah, for those of you that haven't read the book yet, it is a coming of age story for Amy. It is sort of like the quote unquote origin story. So yeah, it is her taking her first steps into the darkness and exploring that within herself and around her. And you mentioned that you were playing with the concept of love and on all its phases, and with Amy being able to feel emotions and sort of play with that more. What surprised you in playing with the concept of like love or under like exploring it? Was there any like moments of like, oh shit, did I just kind of, you know what I mean? Or was there any? If there was.
Surprises.
That you found from writing the book and like the topic of love in general.
Just there's an ability to see the best in people that we love.
Okay.
And I don't know that it surprised me necessarily, but it's definitely interesting to play with the
Right.
words, is what I would say. Um, yeah, I don't want to get into too many spoilers,
Right.
but
Because
like
love
with
is a
all of her relationships, so this isn't just like of the sexual nature either. Like her
right.
relationship with her best friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's also like a rose-colored glasses when it comes to her and some of their boundaries. They have, or like the mother and their dynamic, like it's complicated and she's sort of oppressive, but you feel the love there too.
Right.
There's a scene. I mean, shouldn't be too much of a spoiler, but Amy can manipulate emotions. She
Right. You
discovers this
mentioned that
over the
earlier.
course, and she kind of, you're a teenager. You can manipulate emotions. You can imagine. You could have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's the fun and games portion of this book too,
I got
where she
powers. Let's
just,
go.
yeah, what can I do? And then, the consequences, because it still is horror, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
100%.
She may get her way in some cases, but there's backlash that happens. And so you get to see that with her mother at one point, and she dives into her mother's emotions and gets to feel the complex, all the different ones, and giving, I guess, almost a personification to these emotions as she's going through them. It was a lot of fun. Like, well, okay, I have to let the reader know what this emotion feels like,
Right.
you know. So I'll use like alligators snapping up for fear,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you can visualize and understand that what an alligator suddenly coming up is like, that induces that fear. But then she's digging through and finds love too, and what that looks like, in this, glowing, beautiful little orb. And so you see that there is love there from mother too.
Right.
You know?
And
And yeah, how it's buried and what it's buried under, and so hopefully you have more empathy for some of these characters by the time we get to the end too. If that makes sense.
I think you do. I mean, even though I'm not like a huge fan of Daniel, I think Daniel's important because he offers so many different things for Amy because Amy is thrust into this new reality, and having Daniel sort of as like a grounding stone, even though he is who he is, I think you can see why Daniel's important. You just can't get rid of Daniel because, you know,
It's complicated,
yeah,
right?
there it
Yeah.
serves to make more intimate and more complex the nature of all these relationships and all the threads that are coming together. So exploring complication and exploring trauma, I think, is essential because not everything can be surface. Like you have surface emotions, and then you have real, like you got the stuff that you keep under your
Mhm.
armor, right? So being able
Yeah.
to explore that with the concept of love in general is really cool. And it's not something like when when you hear the word empath, you're like, oh, you can feel people's emotions, and a lot of people don't think much deeper than that. But with Amy, you had the ability to really think deeper in that. What does that mean to like feel emotions and be able to manipulate it and feel it? What is emotion? And in the book, you definitely do play with that, and I think that's one of the strengths of it. Is I don't I have difficulty with emotions as an adult. Like we've talked on the podcast a lot, where I don't feel my emotions so much as I react to them. So as I was reading the book and there was a lot of emotional stuff, I was like, I don't want to say struggling because there's a lot of complex emotional stuff, but a lot of it for me was like unfamiliar because I don't address emotional stuff well. I don't handle it well. So when you're manipulating an emotion or you're exploring an emotion and finding the deeper meaning in it in the book, to me it was like, how does that work with me? Like I don't want to say I related to the book in ways, but parts of the story kind of had me look at myself and be like, okay, why are my emotions so different than like this person's or how, what if someone was delving into my emotional thing? Like, what if Amy was in the room with me? What would she be picking up off of me?
Oh,
Like, I had that moment like, I'm looking I was at my desk reading it because I had it on PDF, and I looked over and I looked at my dog and I was like, if you could sense emotions like Amy, what would you be picking up off of right now? And I think the way you deal with the emotional mechanic of the book is really well handled. And like you said with the mom, you do find that there is love under it. She does come off as oppressive and domineering and like
she's
overprotective as
definitely the
hell.
villain for a chunk of this book.
Right.
At
But
least
then
from
there's
Amy's point of view.
there's
Right?
that moment where Amy can get into it and see what's under it, and your whole sort of perspective changes. Like you said, there is love there. There is good mother, like maternal squishiness there, where you don't see it until Amy really dips into it. And I think that was really well done. I think that was as masterful in the way you do that, because like you said, to Amy, her mom is the villain early on. And that sort of perspective shift through the emotional mechanic is so well done. And I wouldn't even know where to begin with that because I don't deal with emotions well. So kudos on that
Well,
one.
that's an interesting perspective.
Mm.
Um, and that heartens me actually, like that it's helping you process emotions.
A little bit. Yeah, I
No.
definitely need work on it, because like if a book can make me look at it like that, because I'm a dad. For those of you that are new, I know there's several new people enjoying the show. I've got 5 kids through a process of collection. I gotta catch them all.
You do.
And
So accurate.
I know, right? And a lot of them have like special needs or they have emotional issues, and me being the dad I am, it's hard for me to relate on emotional stuff because I grew up the oldest of my siblings. I was the stand-in dad for a lot of times. So I didn't have a chance to feel emotions when I had to like get my brother and sister to school and help them with their homework and make sure the house was
Yeah,
clean.
there's sort of
So
a hitting the ground running
yeah. And now
survival
yeah,
instinct, right?
and now as a dad with kids who have emotional issues and other mental health traumas, it's hard for me, like when my kid is upset, my reaction is, why are you upset? 1. 2, how can I fix it? 3, I did the thing that you needed me to do. Why are you still upset?
Sometimes we just need a hug.
I'm learning that now. But like you said, in parts of the book,
Well, and it's
especially with the mom.
it's also a male thing.
Yeah,
Right?
well, I think I'm
There
better
is
than
a
your average
desire to
bear.
fix things that men often have. Women can too, but I think on the whole, like, at least I've seen it said many times and experienced it myself that, okay, you've got a problem, how do I fix it?
Right.
And if I can't fix it, I don't know what else to do. Stop
If I
crying.
can't fix it, I'm gonna break it. Yeah,
You
exactly.
know.
And like I said, because Amy is such an empath, and her whole thing is emotions. For me, it was tricky to read because I don't deal with them. So I had to, at points in the time as I read the book, I had to stop and think about how would I deal with an emotion like that, or how from my brain, how is Amy's ability to process this emotion or deal with this emotion different? And like I said, to relate as a dad, there's a lot of times where my kids are upset, and my first reaction is, "Who hurt you?" So I can go hurt them.
Well,
2,
yeah.
I did the thing that you told me I needed to do. Now you should be fixed. So reading the book, I kind of had, like I said, a couple moments where I had to like take a step and really think about my emotional mindset or my emotional standpoint, because there were some points where I was like, why does she, and again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but especially around the Daniel dynamic of like Daniel's sort of not like like I wouldn't hang out with Daniel. Like he's too much of a, I get bad juice from him. He smells bad to me, right? I wouldn't hang with Daniel. And there are times where he would say something that would come across kind of like D-baggish to me from my male persona, but I was like, how can she dig you? How, like, and like
Yes.
I see that in like when I talk to my kids, like with their emotions, like I'm like, you should not be like, I don't understand how you feel this way. You're fed, you're clothed, I love you, you're taken care of. Why are you not?
Well, I will say that so her dynamic with Daniel is it starts off very fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? I would say like he comes in, kind of opens up her world in a way.
Right. For sure.
And so you can see the allure,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are some things that are questionable, shall we
Oh,
say, some
sketchy,
red
sus as
flags
fuck. Sus as hell.
that start to come up. And it's like, well, why don't you see them? And her
Mm.
best friend does,
Yes,
right?
she
So
does.
it becomes a point of
Team Kayla.
contention between the two of them. And so that's an interesting dynamic too, I think. Like
Mm-hmm.
got these solid best friends and then this guy comes in and it's not so simple because he does very much help her
Right.
at
Yeah.
the same time. So he'll do stuff that's kind of douchebaggish, as you
Yeah.
said, and then he'll turn around and do something that really kind of saves her ass,
Yeah. Oh
or
yeah.
brings her up out of something, or so. Yeah, I mean, he's a character who's going to be very polarizing and already is. Like there are
Yeah,
people
he is.
who love him, people who hate him, people who love to hate him.
I'm sort of like,
you know,
she could do better.
um, hopefully you understand how she gets there,
Mm-hmm.
and then
I
kind
think
of
you do.
like again, it's hard to not have spoilers,
Mm-hmm.
but no, it explores all the different facets of a relationship, shall we say,
Yeah, I would agree
from
with that.
the lighter fun side initially on through when things get more serious,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So,
And I think you handle that really well, by the way. Like you do handle, because a lot of the book, as I read it, there is a lot of juggling that you have to do. You have to juggle the horror with the lightness. You have to juggle the love with the sex, with the emotions. And I think it is very well done, and you do that. But I want to kind of like step away from the book a little bit, because we've been talking for about an hour about it. And I want to talk about like the process of writing a little more, because I think when people hear you're a novelist or you're an author, they're like, "Oh, I want to write a book, or I can write a book," and then they dip into it and they don't really understand the process of it. So, could you like kind of break down a little bit of like when you started in writing to like what you thought it was, what the process became, and sort of what writing is now for you, if you know what I mean? Because I think that
yeah,
will help a lot of people, because this took a while. Like, this
Yeah.
book took a while. Like, you don't just wake up
took
and
a
one day
minute.
I'm gonna write a book. Like, this took a while. This took a minute. So if we could talk about like maybe the process of writing a little bit and kind of break into that.
I think it might be helpful to go into my background a little
Sure.
bit.
Yeah, let's
You
do
know,
that.
we've known each other for 22 years, as you said, and we met in a gaming group,
Yes, we
right?
did.
A
And we're gonna
role-playing
talk about
group.
gaming too. We're gonna talk about gaming later.
And so I've always I've always been steeped in story. Like
Right.
even back when I was a kid, I would write little comics. Like I would draw and have little stories that would happen and
Mm-hmm.
staple them together and be like, ah, you know. So that inkling has always been there. Um, then I found the outlet of role playing, where you get to.
Right.
It's similar to writing in that you have to get into the skin of your character and explore them. And one of the things that I love about role playing is that you get to switch it up. You have different games, you
Right.
know, periodically. And so every character that I ever came at with role playing, I always like to explore a different dynamic with them. And with
Mm-hmm.
Amy, it was what is love? I was like, I'm gonna make this empath. We're gonna, you know, it's one of the things I wanted to see. And so I've been storytelling for like 22 years.
Yep.
So I've run games and been in them. And when you're the game master, the person running the game, you have to be everyone. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
quickly get into many different skins and see the world from their perspective. You know what I mean? And so
Mm-hmm.
every character in this book also, like, they have lives outside of being in Amy's presence. I'm
Right.
always like, okay, what are they going and doing now? What have they been doing since she last saw them, and how is it going to color their response to whatever?
Right.
So the role playing, like being able to hone that over time, is so very helpful. And part of role playing too is you'll often write a backstory
Yep.
for your character, and you'll give it to whoever's running the game, and then they can do with it what they see fit. Like, you know, they can weave it in or leave it,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Take it or leave it.
And
Yeah.
so I have always been sort of writing those, and usually it wouldn't be more than like a page, maybe two. You know, I mean, we're
Unless
not
you're
talking a
me.
whole lot. You can get more than that, but over time, like we had forums,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that we would have more of a spillover from the games that we played and maybe have a journal where the character sums up what happened. And so I started honing my writing skills that way.
Right.
So that's why I bring this up too. Um, but I will say, like, so Amy started out as a character in a game.
Right.
I'm getting at.
I don't think I've ever played with Amy as one of your characters.
Mm, I don't think so either. Uh, I've changed things significantly, although there's some core things that are the same, but she's not exactly the same as the character that I played in that game. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, I lost my train of thought there.
Amy is the character you played in a game.
Yeah. Um, so there's the role playing aspect of this set the ground for writing her story. So
Mm-hmm.
when I sat down and started plunking out her backstory, from the moment that I put that first sentence on my computer, I heard her in a different way than
Mm-hmm.
some of the other characters. I could literally hear her kind of behind my shoulder, telling the story, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And the feedback that I got off that backstory from my game group was like, there's something here. Like, you should do
Right.
something with this." They encouraged me, you know, for better or worse.
We'll find out.
And so I was like, "Okay, yeah, I should." And life happened. A lot of life happened, and that, you know, that was something 11 years ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just sort of kept this in the back of my mind. Yeah, I should write that. I should write that. Like a lot of people do, right? It
Yeah.
sits there and you're like, because I was like, Amy's story is unique. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. Like we mentioned Harley and Joker as a dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
That's present in a
Yeah.
way.
It's like a
It's
proto Harley
not the
thing.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Harley Quinn's my favorite character.
Yeah, right?
Full disclosure, right? And the Joker is my second favorite character.
Let's examine that later, what it says about you.
I like to laugh. I find the
Sure,
fun and
sure.
the frivolity in even the darkest places.
Sure, let's go with that. Let's go with that.
So I don't know, so 7 years ago, my daughter was born,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't really role play very
Right.
much anymore. You know, you and I, we tried to
Yep.
get games going, and it wasn't working.
Well, now we can do this.
And yes, now we can. And so I needed an outlet, and I was like, well, I've always wanted to write this
Mm-hmm.
story, and I think that people will probably enjoy it. It's a hell of a roller coaster.
It is. It's a fun ride, for sure.
And so I sat down, I was like, I'm gonna seriously do this. So, 7 years ago I sat down and I was like, I'm gonna plunk away at this and had to learn the craft. I started writing, I just wrote her story while role playing is not the same as writing a story.
Exactly.
There are overlaps,
Mm-hmm.
but there's sort of an open-endedness to storytelling that you need to be able to, close up things in a
Yeah.
book.
Right.
That you can't just leave open-ended. In a game, you can introduce a character, and it doesn't matter if that character ever comes back again. Like
Mm-hmm.
they either do or they don't. The player characters either decide they're going to do something and they stick around, or they might like, I never want to deal with that character again, and then off they go. Well, in a book, you gotta have a purpose, and they gotta stay in, and
Right.
So
There's a
there were
reason they're
times
around.
early on, like the character of Leilani, for example.
Mm-hmm.
She originally supposed to just be a cameo,
Mm-hmm.
that we would see her in later installments in the series. And then I came to realize that I can't do that. Like
Right.
I have to bring her in more prominently in the story. Otherwise it won't be satisfying. So I had to
Right.
rewrite some things along the way, and they changed. So there's a need to stay open with your characters.
Mm-hmm.
And when you role play anything, like to stay open to changing should the story need it. And you know this, like
Yeah.
you game too.
Yeah, 100%.
So
For me, like I'm the forever GM. Like I don't get to play a lot. So, like you said earlier on, you have to bounce. You got to dip in and out of skins. And for a character that is a one-off, it's easy to like the player character's like, oh, I'm just gonna that was memorable and move on. But from a book standpoint, like you said with Leilani, she sort of took on a more prominent role in the writing, and from a maybe like an RPG perspective, that wouldn't happen. So in order to develop Leilani, you had to go back and rewrite it so that it was satisfying. Where that roleplay crossovers, they can be a one and done, and it really doesn't affect the story, like for the most part. So I can see what you mean by having Leilani become more character centric.
Yeah, she always like she has a purpose, and she always had a purpose in the overall.
Right.
But I had to tweak that. It ended up coming out so much better for it.
Right.
I think. That's just an example of like having to learn the craft. Right. So how I learned my very first pages that I wrote, I sent to some beta readers that I paid on Fiverr.
Yep,
Right?
I've done that.
I was like, here, is there anything here? And they gave me feedback. And one of them was a pastor. And you know I have that church scene,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yep.
I got a scene in a church that gets up to some shenanigans, let's just say.
Yep.
And she read it and she was like, well, as a pastor, and I didn't know that about her. She had been kind of reading some stuff, and then she was like, just so you know, like, I'm a pastor,
And you're like,
and
ooh.
I wanted to. Part of me wanted to strangle these two
Right.
because that's part of the Amy and Daniel dynamic is
Hmm.
they get it into a lot of things that are fun, but it's also like, you know, hoodlum
Self-inflicted.
behavior, shall we
Yeah.
say. She's like, part of me wanted to strangle these two, but you wrote it so damn well that I'm sitting here cheering them on.
Right.
And I was like, that is a compliment.
That is a
I got the
compliment.
pastor look at that church scene and give it her stamp of approval.
Right.
And for those that haven't read it, it gets there's a little steam
It's a little
that
saucy.
happens
Let's say it's a little
in a church
spicy.
setting.
Mm. There's a little
Um,
there's some blaspheming going on there.
yes, there's some blasphemy. This book has blasphemy, and that's something that surprised me.
Hmm.
Kind of is a theme in the background, like how much Catholicism came out as like both in your face and as background themes.
Actually,
And
I didn't realize that till you just said it, but yeah, now that you mention
it's
it, yeah.
there.
It really
Yeah.
is. Yeah, wow, yeah. Yeah, really
Right.
yeah, it is actually.
Especially
That's kind of cool.
with if you look at the character of Daniel and how we're sort of introduced to him in that church scene and then how the story progresses, um, it is interesting and it's subconscious, like
Right.
on my
But
part,
but
but
is that something you notice like as a writer cuz we're talking about the writing process. How much did you notice that did your subconscious kind of like come out?
a lot. Like there were times where it's like I wrote a character just as that character, and then as I get further into the story, I'm like, I took bits of this person and that, and I didn't even because I didn't set out to, but I'm like, well,
Right.
damned if they aren't sort of that way. So it there is something that happens there, and I mean, we can only write from our experiences, right? So in some cases, I refer to it as my soul. Like
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
part of that, but as being a gamer too, that there's a big part of like your characters are also their own thing, not just you.
Right.
Like that's part of the fun of role playing is getting into somebody else's skin. So it's like, oh, what's that like? And there's always kernels of you for sure. But sometimes, a lot of times, I'll be like, I'm going to play somebody who's the exact opposite of me. What's that like? You
Well,
know?
I think to complement that, I think characters from a role playing standpoint and from a writing standpoint are all explorations of parts of you, right? When you say I'm going to play something completely different from me, you're not actually playing something completely different from you. You're playing something that you haven't accessed. Like you haven't explored it. You haven't touched on that version of you or that emotion or that mentality that you're personifying in a character. And from writing characters, like when I write a game out, I write out NPCs, I write out basic information. And each NPC is different, but there has to be some kernel of reality in them to make them live. And when you explore characters from a dynamic of, well, this is something I wouldn't do normally, it gives you license to really kind of dive into that. And I think,
What would I do if I was in that situation?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
have that
that's the
moment of what
fun
would
of
I
it.
do? Yeah,
I think
100%.
for writers too, like there's that catharsis, I guess, of living another life, of trying out different things. And in my case, because it's horror, I always put a spin on it of how could this go wrong?
Right.
Not that things don't ever go right for Amy, but a lot of times it's like it's just more interesting, I think. And sometimes it's like you're so hard on her.
I mean, it serves the story well though. Like life, I heard a quote that said life is a series of train wrecks with bright spots of happiness. Right? It's just one train wreck after another with bright spots of happiness in there, and I think in Amy's case that's very true, because like she goes from one situation to another, but yet in between that there's like the fence painting scene with Kayla, right? I'm not going to dip into
Yeah.
spoilers, but that scene to me stands out because it's a moment where
You get to
nothing,
breathe.
right, there's nothing bad happening, there's no chaos, there's no one coming after them, nothing. It's just two friends painting a fence and just being friends. And then another train wreck happens later. It's like you can look at that scene particular as like just a moment of breath, a moment of happiness between them before the next train wreck hits. And I think that's a
Yeah.
great I think that's a great thing, like you said. And I think exploring that with someone saying you're too hard on Amy, having those moments is key. You have those
Yeah,
moments
I'm like,
where
well,
Amy can be someone.
she's got some good things that happen too,
Yeah.
for sure. But it is horror.
Yeah. It is horror
So,
because horror is horror. I mean,
well, and I have people, and I know I have a content warning at the beginning, because one of the things as you get into writing is you have to find the right audience for
yes.
your book. So if you've got sex scenes in it, for example, and somebody really doesn't like them, they need to know up front
Hmm.
this is that kind of book. And so I have a content warning at the front of
It
mine.
is really good.
Yeah, what is it?
It's graphic sex, graphic violence, graphic use of ellipses or something. I don't know
Yeah,
it off the top
but
of my head, but it made me chuckle so hard.
mature content and themes, graphic language, graphic sex, graphic violence, graphic design, graphic ellipsis use.
Yep.
Yes.
But let
So yeah, you just, and that's part of learning the
Mhm.
writing process too. So there's different craft techniques, and you got to decide, do I want it to be in first person or third person? Do I want it to be in present tense? Do I want it to be in past? And there's different pros and cons to all of them.
Mhm.
Um, I tried in the beginning a couple different ways, see
So you played with it a little
what
bit.
resonated. Yeah. So there's a version of part of opening chapter, well, most of the opening chapter, it's third person.
Right.
That was an early version too. That was not even in the barn. I originally had it opening in school. So,
Okay.
and then
That
when I got a little bit more serious about it, I was like, "Okay, where are we coming down in?" And I literally felt myself come down in over Amy's shoulder. She hops through that rotted barn window in the beginning, right? So it's there's a lot of different techniques that you can use. Like I went with the immersive style of writing
okay.
because it's an empath story, right? I
You
want you
kind
to
of
get
have to,
down and
yeah.
into, and it's first person, past tense, and I settled on that because it gives me such a wide range. So you can, the story is being told to you after the fact in past
Mhm.
tense, and then I also can, through the use of like italics, have you go right there into the moment in Amy's head. And so it's a technique to control the pacing of the story.
Mhm.
If I need it to speed up, if I need it to slow down, I have a lot of different tools for that. So whenever I need it to slow down, I might get into Amy's head a little bit more, right? You take those moments to process with her. If I need it to speed up, then you can take short sentences.
Mhm.
No, if you want something to be dynamic, you take short, punchy sentences, and you get it, over with. Like a fight scene, for example.
Yeah.
there's a fight scene in this that I had to kind of learn how best to relay that. It should be a cathartic fight scene for you if you don't like Daniel.
I mean,
I will say
I
that.
don't hate Daniel. That just Daniel, he gives me vibes. That's all I'm saying.
Well, yes.
But I mean, you talk about the fight scene. The fight scene for me was interesting because I have years and years and years of hand-to-hand combat experience and weapons training, and I choreographed a bunch of fights for videos, and even in some of the writing I've done, fight scenes are
You're
very
really good
central.
at it. Rick is a talented writer on
We're
his
not
own.
talking about me. Stop it. Stop it.
No
Stop
way.
it.
So
Stop it.
I'm going to switch
No,
this around and
no,
ask
not,
you
no.
about your
This is
process.
no, no. We're talking about you first. But the fight scene, the way you describe it, is way different than I would have, but very satisfying because where I focus on the adrenaline and the technicalities of fight, like foot placement and body movement and stuff, yours is a more, like I said, a visceral, emotional thing where it occurs. There's a chaos to it, and it's well done, but it was way different from the way I would do it. And I was like, when I was reading it, I was like, okay, how I was trying to break it down from a choreography standpoint, and you have this emotional malaise in there, and I'm like,
Well, she isn't the one fighting. She's
right,
observing a fight.
right, exactly, and
feeling
then
the emotions from that fight.
and that's when it clicked on me. I was like, wait, it's a different lens for me. Because when the fight initially, like I said, when the fight broke out, I was like, ooh, where's the choreography? Where's the technique? And Amy's like, da-da-da. It almost gave me a color commentator vibe from like a ringside fight call.
Yeah.
And once I kind of stepped back and kind of sat at the booth and watched Amy call the fight, it was very satisfying. Very well done. Very well done.
Thank you.
And but then again, like you said, fight scenes are interesting because you have to learn the craft of writing a fight scene. You have to learn how to write an emotion. So was that fight scene, I don't know how I want to ask the question where you're going to understand it. How was writing that fight scene like different than writing like a sex scene for you? Was there a difference?
It wasn't really.
No?
I mean, other than she wasn't actively involved. Well, she's sort of actively involved in the fight.
Yeah.
It does affect her
Right.
quite a bit, and she affects it. But it doesn't throw any single
Right.
punches, shall we say. But it wasn't really, and I think that's the point. You're still getting down into that moment, and it's like, all right, this happens. How's she feeling about that?
Mm.
What exactly is going on? How is it affecting her in that moment? Yeah.
Because for me, like you did your little stupid turn the table. For me, when I write a fight scene, I want you in the middle of the fight scene. I want you to feel the adrenaline and
Well,
the
yeah.
danger and the impact.
There is a quickness,
Right.
right? I guess they do differ in the pacing.
Right. I want you to understand the timing is different from like I hate that you opened the door because now I got to talk about my shit, which don't like it. But when
no, you should.
I know, but I just we're celebrating you, woman. Stop it. But I think for me, writing a fight scene or an action scene is almost, I have to like view it from almost like a cinematography level where I want you to see and feel the action and feel the impact of the hits or the shots or the knife cuts or whatever, but not in an emotional way where Amy can feel them. Then once I'm out of the fight scene, I want to wrap it in the context of the story where everybody then feels the gravity of what just happened, right? So it's almost two different things for me. Is there's the fight, which is the spectacle, the event, and everything that surrounds it, the chaos and the fear and the adrenaline and the senses get keyed up in a fight, where once the fight is over, then all the other stuff comes back in. So it's almost like, for me, I don't know how to explain it because I never had to think about it in a way, the way I write it, as opposed to the way you write it. And I think I need to think more on it after this show. Thank you for that. But I don't know. It's
Cool.
interesting. The way you wrote the fight scene was really cool, and it was so different from mine. And that, I guess that's the key point that I'm trying to make, is like, it was a way of presenting a fight that I couldn't see that angle of it. And then once I realized how Amy was basically like calling the fight, it allowed me to more fully visualize and understand how the fight was playing out. Because it wasn't just the fight itself. There was a whole nother layer with Amy's involvement.
Yeah.
And that was initially, I couldn't get past my own like scripting of a fight until I got into Amy's head as the color commentator. And I think that's so well done. And I think physical combat in writing is hard, right? And the way you handled it from the genre and the character standpoint is so different than I would, that I found it very intriguing and unique, a unique thing that I took away. And I think it's great, because now if I was to go back and look at some of mine, I don't want to say I would flavor it in your style, but it's also something I should think about.
Yeah, you learn different techniques from different writers.
Right.
For
So
sure.
with that being said, were there any techniques from other writers that you see yourself using or maybe calling back to as you were kind of writing the book?
Well, I did want to say something that I don't think has come across is that in that fight scene, she gets overwhelmed by the anger.
Right.
And part of what happens is anger, she takes it in and she becomes angry herself.
Right.
Right? And so suddenly she's hit and overwhelmed, and now you got this empath who can control emotions, who's pissed off.
Right.
Right?
That's
And what she decides to do with that,
right. Yeah.
or doesn't decide to do, because she gets overwhelmed and she just reacts. Your anger, not thinking, right?
Yeah.
So there's
go ahead.
she gets into an emotional battle,
And
basically, and
that's
gets her
one of the
clock
things.
clean.
Yeah. and in the real world, if you've done any combat training or been in any fights, you know that emotions often make you not as capable. Because in a real conflict, if you let your emotions overwhelm
See
you,
red. Well, I
yeah,
do.
yeah,
When
you
I've
will
been
lose
in
for the most part,
situations.
because that anger clouds your judgment. It overrides
The
your
adrenaline
ability.
rush.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, that's another good point that you brought up, is I've been in real conflicts and bar fights and bodyguarding work and in fighting through my martial arts. Early on, I did allow my emotions to kind of creep into it more, and I relied on the emotional instinct of a fight. And when you do get overwhelmed, you do lose your sense of self in a fight. And I think by showing Amy being overwhelmed and becoming angry, you highlight that point in some point, and as the fight plays out. And
I used the metaphor, to get back to the writing techniques. I used a metaphor of a bull, like an angry bull in a china shop,
yeah,
right? For her to show what that's like, and how it just takes over and going from there. So,
yep.
you had another question you led into. Remember what it was?
Yeah, we were talking about writing techniques and how you pick it up, and how we were talking about the fight scene and learning the technique from that. Are there
an
any
influence.
Yeah, any other writing techniques or writers' influences that you could call back to, or that you relied on a little bit to kind of further create your story and work scenes out? Because you said you have to develop new techniques, and in order to develop different techniques, you have to be shown, or you have to learn them or figure them out.
Sure. So this this has been a long process that has involved many different people over multiple different groups.
Mm-hmm.
Getting involved in a writing group is a fantastic thing. I had critique partners on that fight scene in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I put it out for other people to critique, and then they would be like, okay, you know, you could ramp it up here, or this isn't hitting the way that you want, or whatever. And so you hone it through multiple different people.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just Googling how to write a fight scene, and you'll get articles on that. And you pick and choose what you resonate with. It's not that
Right.
it becomes your style necessarily, but
Okay.
you're like, yeah, I could see that. The punchy line thing. Like, okay, yeah, I gotta keep it. If I want the fight to feel dynamic, I need to keep it dynamic, like
Mm-hmm.
with my words. And so it's been a lot of different hands went into this. It's not any one person or technique or whatever. It's a lot of them. So I'd say, like, in terms of author influences, when I first started writing, I was not a Stephen King fan. Like, I hadn't read anything of his except for
Mm-hmm.
The Green Mile, and I didn't like it.
What? You
I
didn't
know.
like the Green Mile?
I didn't like it. And
How
then
dare you?
no, and
I
I
never
was in,
read
like,
it.
in my early 20s when I read it, right? And then I revisited, and now I love it. So
Right.
this is a testament to how much we can change, right? But I started reading him, and I'm like, I have a style very similar to his, which
Mm-hmm.
I call sort of the fireside chat
Right.
style. Like, he makes you feel like he's really telling just you that story. So it was like I resonate with that. Now, of course, I love him. Like, he's the master in many ways.
His writing is very good. I haven't read a lot of King. Like your husband Brian, the Dark Tower series is sort of my experience with King. I
Well, that's how I got into him. Brian was like,
yeah,
"Here, read
read
this,"
that. Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then it went from there.
Mm.
So it's funny. The
All
Dark
right.
Tower being our in. And I'm not
Yeah.
super into fantasy either. That's sort of my in with King.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that King, we mentioned King as a writer. He's so versatile. He does horror, he does fantasy. He did stuff like The Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption because
Mhm.
there's a versatility to what he does, and we've talked about it from a gaming perspective too. You have to have a certain versatility to tell different stories at different points in times within a story, because a story or a game isn't just the story or the game. There is other little stories and other little moments inside those greater moments, and if you don't have the technique to tell those stories, or bring up those situations, you have to develop those as part of your kit. So
Yeah.
I think King is a great example of how to do versatility in not only genre but also writing. And like I said, I primarily read The Dark Tower from King. I dipped into The Stand a little bit, but The Dark Tower is where sort of my experience with King, and even within that series, there's a lot of versatility and mastery in the craft that you could see it working its way through the book series for sure.
Well, that series is more like it's very role play esque, I feel like.
Yes.
Because the characters are there and they just sort of ramble through
Yeah.
for a
Love
lot
it.
of the time. And that's one thing about King's style. People say that he rambles, but I it's those little things that make you care later. Like in
Mhm.
in my experience, it's not rambling just for the sake of rambling. Although you're
Some of it is.
I'll forgive you for saying that. That's not I'm saying it's not there at all.
Right.
But I think it's character development.
Mhm.
And that is so important to take the time to really get to know your characters so that they have a more emotional impact. Stephen King is excellent at that. Like even in his short stories, he'll tell you little quirky things about the characters so that when they die horribly
Yeah,
or whatever,
they often
you
do.
care, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Another influence, well, and I just want to say too, on writing. Like if
Mhm.
you are thinking about getting into writing, On Writing by Stephen King is sort of his memoir
Okay.
of his writing journey, and he gives advice sprinkled out throughout it that I found invaluable. And just like he's got a line where, he'll go on and on about editing and the editing process, and then he just stops and he's like, sometimes I kept the adverb in because fuck it, I like it that way.
Right.
And I kept that in my head throughout the writing process.
Mhm.
There's also saying about how you're still gonna get criticized no matter what you do.
Yep.
You might as well do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah. I mean, even
You
we
have
get
to,
critique.
as any creative. So you've got
Mhm.
this show and your Twitch channel. You have to kind of run out of fucks to give.
Yep.
you
You
know,
just got to do it your
it's
way.
very helpful. Just be like, well, the story is what it is, and I put my heart and soul into this book.
Yeah, you can tell.
Every last bit of me to try to make it the best story that I could, because when I decided to write, I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it well into a standard that I can be proud of. And I have exacting standards.
Yeah, you do.
Like I am my biggest critic.
We all are.
Yeah. And I am very proud and love how it came out.
You should. It's really, really
It's a
good.
very twisted story. Like so my another big influence is Anne Rice, right?
Mhm.
And she has a very I mean, she's the queen of horror. She has a very more she gets into details and she'll take you down and into a scene to make you feel like you're living there. And
Mhm.
sometimes overly so.
Right.
It could be said. And that's a fair criticism, I think. But I personally devour that style. I love it.
Mhm.
So like to feel like she made me feel like I was walking, and I'm rereading Lasher right now, which is the
Okay.
second in her Witching Hour series. It's the same thing. She has a way of making you feel like you were walking the streets of New Orleans, right?
It's not New Orleans, it's Nolans. Get it right.
Orleans.
Nolans. Nolans. Come
I'm
on,
very
girl.
Wisconsin. Sorry.
Yeah, you are.
And so I took that with me. Like that was something that was important to me for my
Mhm.
writing style. And then you got somebody like Jim Butcher, who is urban fantasy, although he has
Love
a
Butcher.
fantasy series and a steampunk series.
Love Butcher.
And Ryan also shoved Jim Butcher in my face. He's my book influence.
Good
A
call.
lot of times he'll be like, check this out. And he'll slap it in front of me. And I don't even read the blurb.
Mhm.
These things. I'm just like, okay. I take it as the story is and not
Mhm.
with any expectation, which is such a gift.
Yeah.
To be able to just come in and be like, I don't know much about this. Okay, there's a wizard in Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right,
I'll
let's
give it a
go.
try.
Let's roll.
And I actually almost didn't finish the first one.
Why?
Put it down. I put it down halfway through because I just wasn't connecting
Right.
to the characters. And I was like, I'm just not. And I got to the part with the fairy. I'm blanking on his name. Tutu,
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
who
It's
I
been so
absolutely
long.
adore. I
Yes.
adore him now. But at the
Is it
time,
Zoot? No.
Tutu.
Toot. That's it, yeah.
He calls him the Za Lord.
The Zalord,
With
that's
the
it, yeah.
the Za Lord.
Yeah.
The Pizza Lord.
Yes.
And I just was like, what is this and where's it going? And I just didn't want to deal with it. And I was listening on audio to the audio version. And so the voice for Tutu got too annoying to me at the same time, and I was like, no, I just can't. Right? And Dresden is, and this is the thing with urban fantasy, I think in general, very much like I am big badass,
Right.
and he came across like that. And later on, he does not. Like the series goes in such wonderful directions, and he gets more humble, and so there's character growth there. But I guess his ego bothered me
Yeah, he gets
in the
humbled for
beginning.
sure. Yeah,
And so I put it down, and then Brian shoved it back in my face, and he was like, "No,
finish
finish
it.
it.
Yep.
Go on to the next series and give that a try." And so I did, and I finished it, and it wrapped up, and it was an adequate story. And then I did the second one, and I was just absolutely hooked.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for him
I
because
think it's Full
there's
Moon
a
is the second one.
there's a sense of humor to Jim Butcher's work that I really resonate with. And he's a gamer too,
Yeah,
right?
oh,
He
100%.
wants to always make it fun.
Mhm.
And so those are kind of my three big author influences, I guess.
That's not a bad trio right there. I mean, you got like the king of like horror and writing versatility. You got Anne Rice, who's just a monster, both in and out of the page. Like she's like I haven't read a lot of Anne Rice, but the stuff I have read is just it's so like just like you said, visceral, and it brings you down and it takes you there. And then Butcher's like one of my favorites as well because Butcher's style is this sort of rolling irreverence and sort of like it's a thrill ride, but yet there's a humanity to it where Harry just gets beat down, but yet he gets back up, he grabs his hat, and he just is like, all right, I'm bleeding out,
Well,
but it's gonna get
and
done.
he'll go into a situation with his fireball ready or
Yep.
whatever. Like he's gonna handle it. And he goes in with his plan, and it all goes sideways,
Yep.
right? And then he has to get out of it using his wits. It's never cheap,
Right.
right? He gets out of it by the skin of his teeth
Yep.
and in ways that make sense.
He earns it
The
for sure.
character. There's no Deus Ex Machina,
Nope.
you know, and that's just masterful,
It
in my
is.
opinion.
Yeah. And
So when
it's
oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No. Go ahead. I
I was
want
just gonna
like
say when I
this is
when I
what
first
this is what
started
happens when you have friends for 22 years. Like it's what happens.
when I first started this journey, I wanted to be like one of my goals was to get on a shelf next to Jim Butcher.
Nice.
I didn't realize that I wasn't writing urban fantasy because it could have gone in that direction.
Right.
Right? It could have. But then as I got to understand genre,
Mm-hmm.
genre expectations, and I'm like, man, everything I touch is horror. Like
Right.
I cut my teeth as a role player on Vampire the Masquerade.
Ugh, Vampire the
You know,
Masquerade.
so there's a love for that genre that just I'm like, how can I twist this? I like twisted dark things,
Mm-hmm.
but to put humor on them. Obviously, like I said, I like the Joker and Harley. So
Yeah.
there's always that through this whole thing. I said, how anytime that I can get humor
Mm-hmm.
shoved in there in a way that isn't ham-fisted,
Yeah, or cheap. Yeah.
cheap, like that's important. I do. If I can make it funny, I do make it funny, or at least I strive to.
Yeah. I
Um,
think you do a
but
good
not
job
at
at
the
it.
expense of the seriousness of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it will never be inappropriate, like something dire is happening, and then Amy's cracking some snark ass joke.
You know, when you mention that, I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe has a problem with that. Like if you watch the Marvel movies, they're always cracking jokes.
That's a comic superhero thing.
Yeah,
And
but
that's
I
fine.
mean,
That's what that genre does. Same thing with urban fantasy. On
mm,
the whole, Jim Butcher is almost in a class of his own because a lot of the urban fantasies that I've read, the characters tend to just be snarky at inappropriate times. No, where it's like something horrible just happened and you're gonna one-liner it, which is fine. Like it's another way of handling a story. But for me, it takes me out of the seriousness of the moment and it
Hmm.
takes it down a notch, which some people may need, right? We all come at stories from different perspectives. So that's how I understood that I wasn't doing urban fantasy. It was
Right.
one of the things where
Yeah.
if I think people that like urban fantasy will also like this if they like
Yeah. Oh
darker
yeah.
urban fantasy.
I love urban fantasy, and like I said, horror's not my genre, but I really enjoyed your book. So yeah, I definitely 100% on that statement.
The urban fantasy tends to end each book like on a higher note, like the hero wins the day.
Hmm.
You know, there might be some bad stuff still. I mean, Harry's got himself in recent books in a heap of trouble,
Yeah.
right? There's things looming over him, but he
Hmm.
still comes out victorious. And in horror, you're not limited by
Yeah.
that. It could happen. The character can come out victorious, or they could die,
Right.
or they could find a fate worse than death, which in some ways I would argue is what happens to Amy at the end of this book.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I could
No.
totally agree with that. But I want to. Chris messaged me as he's kind of watching along. It says it's like even in the most darkest times or moments, Nikki still vies to find the beauty and love in it. Not everything needs to be doom and gloom. There's still hope and some light that they'll make it through, and I think that's very apropos. 100%, I would agree with that. Is that something that you purposely tried to do, or is that just something that sort of came out as a product of it?
I don't know. I think a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm. And I
It's
go ahead.
it's just if it gets too hopeless, like I said before, you lose that connection. There
Right.
has to be hope to keep going for a brighter day in the future.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've personally noticed through my writing and my character development as a GM and a player and amateur writing
Which,
is you have to have an ability to let the story go where the story needs to go. Like
yeah.
when I
Oh
sat
yeah.
down, I was like, okay, I have an idea of what I want, and I want to get this done. But there were times in my, let's call it, book, where there were scenes that were never initially there. Like a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff with Camille, the assistant Cam, that wasn't a thing. Like Cam was just supposed to be an assistant to Maddox. She was just supposed to be like sort of the, hey, I'm a boss character dynamic, where Cam was just the assistant and she like cameoed like Leilani did. But I noticed that as Cam and Dox, the character, for those of you that don't know or are new to the show, the whole DoxRyan persona on Twitch is actually comes from my main character. Like I started a Twitter. I was like, oh, I'm gonna tweet in character, just random shit to kind of draw interest. Well, as life kind of got more and more crazy, I had less and less time to write, and streaming became more of an easier thing for me to do, where I didn't have to do so much. I didn't know where to go, and I sort of took on. Well, I already had the branding as DoxRyan, so
Yeah. It works,
get,
and it's a unique name.
it's yeah, exactly.
Right?
But as Dox and Cam had more screen time per se, there was the story had to go on its own way. Like I never designed Cam to be like she was never Cam. She was just his assistant. She kept him on track, but she sort of became this more deeper figure. And the people who have read the book are like, Cam is like my favorite. Camila is amazing. Don't. She's so precious. She must be protected, right? And I think as a writer and as a GM and as a creative in general, you have to let whatever project you are working on develop on its own, but within the boundaries that you set for it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. There's a scene at the end I won't get into spoilers, but there's a scene with Daniel at the end.
Yep.
And I knew what I wanted to do with it.
Uh-huh.
I had a beat that I had to hit with that character. And didn't had some ideas, and then when I started writing them out, he would just be like, "No, I wouldn't do that." Oh, oh. He was just being a stubborn ass.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And I was like, "Oh, what I need for the story is for something like this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Something that showcases this part of him," I always say. And so then I was like, however that comes out, I was like, I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to force it here. Well, I'm just going to move on with the story, write the scene that comes after this, and if it'll be what it is, right? And then I wrote one of the stories. Let's see, I don't want to spoil anything. We'll just say that Amy's in the back of Kayla's truck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, at the end, there's a scene that happens there, and then it escalates, and then Daniel's like, he just started doing the thing that I needed him to fulfill. Right? The point that I needed him to hit. He was like, I'm gonna do it this way. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
That works. And it's disturbing and twisted.
Yeah.
And wonderful. And it hits what it needs to hit.
Yeah.
That's an example of time when I rolled with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole character of Kayla, by the way, is a rolling with.
Yeah, I kind of got a sense of that.
Yeah.
I kind of got a sense of that because as you read Kayla, I didn't talk to you about the book much. I didn't have much time to really help with the transition of moving and all the other shit that I got
I was
going on in my
surprised that
life.
you even read the whole thing with all that you have going on. So
Well, you're my girl. I'm gonna, I told you I was gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. That's me. But as I was reading it, I was like, I totally got that vibe that Kayla sort of grew organically, and you kind of gave her breath. And there wasn't anything in particular when I read it. It was just like I got that Cam vibe. Like to me, like Kayla came off as like Cam. To me, like as I was reading through it, I was like, that's the Cam character. She sort of grew into something much, much bigger. And just
yes.
like I said, it wasn't any way you wrote it. It was just the vibe from like the way I write that I could see Kayla being that sort of character that just sort of grew into something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she for years in my head was supposed to back away from Amy in the beginning. Like when Amy gets these abilities, she was always the best friend that just sort of was like, okay, you're losing your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be around you anymore or whatever. And then I wrote that first chapter with her in the barn, and I got to the end of it, and Kayla looked me in the eye, and she was like, "No, I'm not going anywhere, right? The way that you've written me, there's no way I'm going anywhere." And I was like, "You're right." So then I had to rework the entire series to fit her in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was fine because like as a GM you roll.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
one thing
100%.
again that having my years of storytelling experience, I went, okay, let's go there and do that.
Nice.
It wasn't in my original thoughts, but I think it makes the story a lot stronger to have her in it, and she's a favorite character for a lot of people.
She's really well done, and all the characters are really well done. Whether you like them, hate them, love to hate them, or you just in general, I think that is a strength of the book and of your writing style in general. Because for those of you that don't know, Nikki didn't just drop a book, right? You don't just drop a book. You have other stories that have been featured in anthologies. You have little short stories that have gone, and so like you don't just one day and be like, published a book, right? There's other things. You got to have like little short stories that kind of build your toolbox. And I think,
Yeah, like
go ahead.
the I've written some things called drabbles,
Mm-hmm.
and if you are interested in writing, you might want to look into what they are because they're both the most frustrating, greatest tool in your kit because it's telling a story in 100 words.
Right.
You get
Yeah, good luck
100
with that.
words, and you have to tell a whole story. It has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and be interesting. Have a twist at the end. No, and so I took on this challenge from a writing group that I was in, and I kind of got tricked into publishing it. Thank you, Michelle, if you're watching.
I think she is.
Well, not the Michelle you know. This is
Oh, then
a
no.
different
I don't
Michelle.
know if she's watching.
Michelle Sissom. Not sure if
Okay.
that's how you pronounce her last name,
Oh,
but
from
anyway.
the right. I know the
Yeah,
name.
the
Yeah.
writing prompts and critiques group.
Yeah. That's a good group, by the way.
Yes. So she kind of tricked me and several others into getting into this book, and my rebel got accepted, and I was like, oh, so somebody else read my story and it resonated enough to get it in here. And the thing with Drabbles is it teaches you how to edit,
Mm-hmm.
how to get succinct with your words. You got 100 words and you got to use every single one.
All right.
And so my novel is 127,000 words.
Good
And
Lord.
good Lord. And it was so helpful going through the editing process to know, I really don't need this word. This word is superfluous, whatever. Invaluable. So if
Mm-hmm.
you haven't done it as a writing exercise, even if you don't submit it anywhere, I highly recommend it. You'll gain some mad editing skills. And then I got bit by the bug and I loved to write travels.
Right.
Like I was only allowed to do so much outside of my novel. You
Mm-hmm.
only have so much time in a day. So they were really good little break as well.
Switch
So,
ups.
and one of the hardest things for me as a human being is putting myself out there. So like
Mm-hmm.
even just being on this camera in front of everybody live is something that I've had to work to overcome in
You're
my
doing
life.
great, darling. You look wonderful.
Well, I've gotten much better at it.
Yep.
Again, it also helps to run out of fucks because you're like, it's going to be what it is, right?
Right.
So, yeah, and to bring it back, we were talking before about how I got into the publishing
Mm-hmm.
process like I did. I had that
Yeah.
sort of wanting to be on the shelf next to Jim Butcher, realizing I was into urban fantasy, bursting that bubble. But
Aw.
then there's, do I want to even be on the shelf in these major stores?
Yeah, because your book is self published, right?
Yeah, so I started my own publishing company. It's Phoenix
Yeah, you
Rose
did.
Publishing,
Let's go.
and we'll see where it goes. I'm always open. I may open it up at some point in the future to anthologies and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. Right now, I'm sort of getting my sea legs with my own stuff, but I decided to do that because I took a look at all my options, and when you get into traditional publishing, they pay you about 7 to 10% royalties on every book, and that's profit on the profits, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a pittance. That kind of irked me, but that wasn't quite enough because if you sell enough,
Right.
7 to 10% can grow and be
Right.
amazing. But then as I got into it, I understood that like if you're a new author, they don't really do much marketing for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really I'd have to be out doing this stuff anyway. And for the little percentage that you get and the absolute rigmarole of having to find an agent, and that's a whole thing. And you know, having gatekeepers, really. And I've
Ugh.
written something that jumps across genres.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different and strange and hard to package, and believe me, I've been working on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just wrote her story as it was. And a lot of times when you write it, you get an agent, they go in there, they mess around with it, and at the end of the day, what I decided is I want control over my characters. So I've
Right.
heard many a horror story that once a publisher buys your book, they own the characters. So
What?
I have a 9 book, yeah, I have a 9 book series planned. And I'm writing it accordingly. Right?
Uh-huh.
There's stuff that's going to come out in book 1 that is not going to be answered or until we get to that 9th book, really. Well, maybe a little bit earlier, but it's a long-term game. And if they decided on book 2 or book 3 even that I'm just not selling well,
Mm-hmm.
they'll pull it and bury you. And they own your characters or however long the contract goes, but it's
Mm-hmm.
standard. And you might be able to buy the rights back from them. But I was like, I am not okay with that.
No,
No.
God no.
These are characters that have been with me for so long and I care about them and I want to see what their story is. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, what's the self-publishing thing? No. I looked into it and I was like, well, that looks like a challenge.
Sure, add
Well,
that on top of shit.
and it's possible now in a way
Mm-hmm.
that it wasn't before. That's I think is only a great thing. So now I get to bring my story out to the people. I don't have to get it through gatekeepers of the publishing industry.
Yeah.
Know what I mean? Who might not resonate with me. I'm a misfit.
Yeah,
I
you are.
always have
Well,
been.
it's the same thing with our podcast. Like, traditionally, you'd have to have a radio show, right? And you'd have to sell it to a radio show, and then they dabble in it, or even on the Twitch stream side and the role playing side, what I do with all my shows, like you couldn't just turn on the DoxRyan channel. You'd have to go to like KPB Rex or whatever and have them deal around with it. So creative control and owning your own shit independently
It's
is
everything.
it's everything, and it's also everything, because everything is on you now. Everything's on me. Everything's on
Yep.
Chris. Everything's on you. Everything's on Brian. Like, you don't have the infrastructure of like a publishing company or a media company to kind of lift some of the stuff off. But as you said, you're a new writer. They weren't really going to be doing much work for you anyway, and they
Yeah.
own your shit. Like,
Just was
hell no.
not something I was interested in.
No,
I want complete creative control. I wanted to be able to put sex scenes in and not have them be like, "Oh my goodness,
oh Lord,
oh,
how dare!
you can't, you can't put
Right.
that in there because we won't be able to sell it to as many people."
Right,
And it's like, well, but that's part of Amy's story.
right.
So
It's kind of central to that.
yeah, or like the cussing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of swearing in this. They're teenagers, you know.
Teenagers cuss.
That might have been scaled back significantly or taken out altogether. And that's just not my style. It would kill my soul.
Yeah,
And this is supposed to be an expression of that soul, not an invitation to kill it.
right. And Chris mentioned something in DMs. He said that publishers, recording studios, and media companies, they were able to take what they wanted because they were the in between. They were the middleman. And with the advent of social media and the internet, what it is, middle people they're not needed as much anymore. The old traditional forms of, well, you submit your stuff isn't necessary anymore because you have Amazon and like Google Publishing and all the other places you have it. Which there's a link in the chat where you can all the
Yeah,
different
it's
outlets.
available
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Like you
Yeah,
can get it at Barnes and Noble. I'm in the process of trying to get Barnes and Noble to do the print copy, and that's a whole nother headache. They do not, I don't think, like self-published people.
God no.
There, they have so many flaming hoops, and if you published on Amazon, they don't like you. Like, eh, they're predisposed to throw more hoops in your way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will get it ironed out,
Yeah,
but they are making it difficult for me.
it's because
And
they fear your power.
yeah, so it's and there are ways as a self-published author, I should say, to get your book in the libraries, in the bookstore. That's no
Mhm.
longer the purview of the big four
Right.
publishers anymore. You can do it. You just got to put the legwork in. And a lot of times, like a local store will want to carry local authors.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a thing. So I don't. It's more work in a lot of ways, but like I've always been my own. Not always, always, but for a long time now, I've been my own boss
Right.
in a lot of different ventures in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't so much of a jump for me. I was like, I could do it, and it's a huge learning curve. That's been a lot of this year,
Mm-hmm.
really not only learning the craft of writing, but learning how to publish and all the ins and outs of it, and still being surprised by things like, Barnes and
Mm-hmm.
Noble deciding to not take the ISBN number that I have because I used it on Amazon. It's not
Dicks.
Amazon's it's not Amazon's ISBN number. I
Right. It's
bought it.
yours. Right. And
Mine.
that's a huge thing, right? When I was heavily into writing my book, and I'm still dabbling with it, people are still pestering me about it, but that was one of the things that I was looking into when people were saying it's really good, you should get it published, is one of the pieces of advice I got was buy your ISBN, right? Make sure you own it so that you can put it wherever. So
Wherever, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
where the stores don't generate the ISBN, you have it. You then
Yeah.
decide where it goes, not where the
Well,
stores go.
now they're saying, well, you use that number with Amazon, and we don't want.
Tough shit, it's mine.
Whereas, by the way, like Random House has a
Mhm.
single ISBN
Uh-huh.
for their stuff.
Right.
That's fine with them. They can be on Amazon.
Just not
They can be on
independent.
Barnes& and Noble.
Right.
It's not me.
Because
And if
you're
I would have
independent.
uploaded to Barnes& and Noble first, apparently this isn't an issue.
Oh, kiss my ass.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That is such petty bullshit. That is such petty
Barnes& and Noble, by
bullshit.
the way, takes more royalties than their authors. They take
What?
so my book is more expensive. Is going to be more expensive on there. The ebook's the same.
Right.
Like, this is behind the scenes stuff. Like,
Well, that's
why?
important to hear. Yeah.
No. So is it worth it? I'd still want it to be in the store,
Right.
but it has soured me on them, I gotta
Oh,
say.
I could see that
Whereas
100%.
when I first started this, it was like, oh, to be in Barnes and Noble, to see my book there. Ooh, and now it's like, okay, if that's how you're gonna be, you don't really want us there, and you want to make it ridiculously difficult, then I'm gonna take my damn sweet time, and people are gonna be buying it on Amazon instead.
Facts, 100%.
No.
100%. So,
So
Nikki, we got
we
about,
have power in this as self-published authors. I
yes,
want to put that out
independent.
there. For
Independent
creators in
artists.
general, like, we
100%.
don't need that middleman anymore.
No, we
Now,
do
is it
not.
nice to have help with marketing? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, there's some perks to it, and I don't wanna, like, completely negate traditional publishing. If it's something that you wanna do, it can be very worthwhile and satisfying, and you do you.
Yeah,
But
because some people
if
can't do social media or marketing.
Yeah, and so they're fine with whatever they're able to get. They might not be as invested in what they're writing, right?
Hmm.
To me, I put my heart and soul, I breathe life into Amy. It'd be
Right.
like giving somebody my child. That's how I look at this.
Right.
And so it all just depends on what you want and what your goals are. And,
Uh,
my goals are just to kind of see what happens with this and,
Take
you
it and
know,
run.
take it each day at a time,
Yeah.
and build it one reader at a time.
100%. Well, we got about half an hour left before we hit the happy endings. And I want to kind of like get to know you. I want the people here and who are going to hear it in audio version or watch it on YouTube get to know you sort of as Nikki and not necessarily the writer. So a couple questions that I just wanted to ask you is like, outside of writing, like what do you do? Like what are you into? What's your thing when you're not writing? So that the people
Oh
get
my
to know
goodness.
more of you.
I do like to play video games. I've been
Yeah.
playing Diablo 3 with my husband lately,
Nice.
just to kill things, you know.
Murdering shit just to get rid of anxiety. Oh, I'm with you right there, girl.
Mhm. I also really like to work out. In fact, you're the one that got me hooked on Bob, who's
That's right. Body
what does
opponent
he
bag.
thank you. I was gonna say, what does he stand for? Body
Mm-hmm.
opponent bag. And I even got a little Bob for my daughter. So
Yay!
that they sit next to each other, and she doesn't like to punch him, but she will climb on him and on Bob, and she has made it into a jungle gym
Nice.
scenario. So I'm like, that's still exercise, and that counts.
Yes, functional fitness is 100%. So your
So
video games and fitness. What else?
I found that I actually miss working out if I don't do it regularly.
I know I need to get back into it. Like with all the stuff going on here, I don't have the time to run to the gym, but I need to make the time because I need it so bad. Because it's endorphins, it's serotonin boosters, it burns off cortisol. So the benefits of working out and being fit are just it's I can't
It is. Well,
preach it enough.
the reason that I ended up getting Bob is because I was so stressed and had so much pent up energy that and the world lately has been that way. And I am into
It's a shit show.
politics for
Well,
reasons I
we are,
can't
yeah.
fathom. um, but at one point, I just got, I was like, I'm going to have a heart attack if I don't get an outlet, if I don't punch something, you know? And so I got him, and it's just such catharsis to just get that energy and that anger out.
Yeah.
So there's that, and I like to go out on walks, with my husband and my daughter to I live on the shores of Lake Michigan, and being able to just be there with nature and the awesome power of that lake. You know,
I will
it,
say this, being out here in the Pacific Northwest, I miss lakes. I never thought I would miss being able to, like, I don't want to say I took it for granted, but like, I can't just go to the lake and swim. I got to find like a river or like a swimming hole out here. And it's like not at all the same. And my water loving boy is just like, I miss my lakes. So I
Mhm.
100%, I feel you on the lake, 100%.
Although you got the Pacific Ocean, that's a mighty beautiful thing too.
It's cold as shit. I'm not going in that motherfucker.
But just to be in its presence,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've been out to
And
California before, and
yeah.
I didn't want to leave. Like the moment I got on the ground, I was like, I'm home. I want to stay here.
That's kind of how we
There's an
felt when we got
energy
here. Yeah.
to it, and
To be in
obviously
an
it's
actual
ridiculously
forest,
expensive.
up
The
here.
redwoods. Oh,
Yeah.
gorgeous.
I take Nick's running. I haven't taken her in a while because we've had car issues and whatnot. But like, I would get up and take Nick's running in like the woods. Like back in Wisconsin, we have like we have woods, but you don't get to like the woods until you drive 6 hours. I got
Yeah.
woods 10 minutes outside of town, and they're
Mhm.
fucking ancient and massive,
They're
and
massive.
there's,
Beautiful.
like you said, there's an energy to it. And Nix and I went on this run a month ago, where we actually came down a trail into what I call this flat bottom. It was just like this flattened out area, and it had these towering trees, and it was just clear. Like it was clear, you could see strands of trees, but the ground was clear. And right when we came down into this flat bottom, no fucking lie, there was a mountain lion rolled up on the
Oh.
side of on the berm, just laying there in the trees, right? Nix and I rolled into flat bottom. She stopped, bullied up, looked that way, and I looked over, and there's literally a fucking mountain lion just chilling. Picked its head up, looked at me and Nix, kind of rolled its shoulders a little bit, got up, and I'm like, oh fuck, here it
Oh,
goes.
fuck, indeed.
I'm gonna have to kill a mountain lion to protect my dog, right? It's Dox is gonna beat this motherfucker old school style. And it kind of moved a little bit, kind of looked us over, and then kind of had that moment of like, I don't want that smoke, and rolled off into the woods. And we didn't see it the rest of the trip. But like growing up where we did,
You didn't have mountain lions.
didn't have mountain lions. I've seen bobcats and foxes and coyotes and black bears when I went up to Michigan. But I'm going to admit it. I hit that flat bottom, looked over there, and my body went, oh, okay.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
this is it.
This could be
I'd
some
be
shit.
like, well, so this is how it ends.
So yeah, the power of nature, 100%. 100%. I can attest to that. So nature walks and gaming and
then I am also, because of this pandemic, I have been homeschooling. Well, it's not just the pandemic. I can't throw it all on that. It was a coincidence that the pandemic happened because I've been homeschooling my daughter. She's in second grade. And she went to kindergarten and hated it.
Right.
He was like, what is this business?
This is nonsense.
And so like we had been in talks with her a week before pandemic hit in mid-March.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan and I were about to start butting heads about homeschooling her.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got taken out of our hands.
You're like, I win by default.
Yep. And so I was like, well, I guess you're being homeschooled. And so I've also, in all of this, been having to learn how to be a teacher, get the resources, figure all that out. And that's been its own little challenge. And she still hates school.
Right.
So like then I became the person that she had to deal with instead of her teacher,
Right.
And I'm like, what kind of kid hates kindergarten? It's like the best of times.
Yeah, you get cookies and nap time.
To play a ton, She had playtime built in, but she just didn't like the rigid structure, and I can't even blame her. I really hated that aspect of it too.
Right.
So now it's been challenging and a fun thing to come up with ways to keep her interest. Like we've been reading, that video game Hello Neighbor?
Yep.
I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Yes, I am familiar.
If anybody is not and you haven't played it, it is surreal. It's sort of a horror game.
Yep.
Not even sort of, it is. It's a horror game,
Yeah,
but
it's
it's
definitely
also
a horror
colorful and bright. It's got a unique art
it's a
style.
clash, yeah. It's very cartoony in a lot of ways.
It's also an absolute train wreck to play in terms of controls. Like it's just the physics engine is terrible. But when you're a kid, you overlook this stuff, and so she's played it and loves it. And even though it's dark, and she likes horror too, so she's gotten into
got you and her dad.
And Brian, no doubt. So one of her favorite things to do lately is listen to the Scary Stories podcast.
Nice.
And it's like supposedly true stories that people have sent in, and there was one whole session about the Goat Man.
Chupacabra.
Like the Goat Man. I saw the Goat Man, and basically they all come down to I was in the woods or I left my house or whatever, and the Goat Man was looking at me. And then he threw his voice and he sounded like my sister or my best friend or whatever. And then nothing happens. They just run and hide, and the Goat Man does nothing.
He's lazy. It's lazy Goat Man.
And so my daughter's like, he didn't do anything. Maybe he just wants to bring them pizza. And so had a crack up about that. And there was one story where the goat man is eating a deer out in the woods, and the guy finds him and shoots at him. Like, I saw the goat man and he was eating a deer, and I raised my rifle and I shot. And she's like, "Why are they shooting the goat man? He's just eating lunch." So anyway,
Nice.
she's into Hello Neighbor and have books for
Mhm.
Hello Neighbor that are
Oh, no.
surprisingly well written.
Really?
I'm reading this and I'm like appreciating it as an author for what the books needed to do, and I was like, that's pretty impressive. So hats off to that author. I think her name is Carly Ann West.
Mhm.
But she's enamored, and so her reading comprehension, rather than reading the dry like textbooks that you have to read, me reading to her at night and having her follow along, she's getting much bigger words quicker
Mhm.
off of this, Hello Neighbor horror novel.
Right.
So
Oh,
it
I
she
can
can't
hear
get
the
enough of
Karens
it.
now.
She's reading it on her own. Like,
Mhm.
she's got an interest in it. So being able to nurture that where it is rather than force it where she's not interested is one of the gifts of homeschooling.
Mhm.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think it's great because back when my kids were younger, I did all that stuff too. I read to them whenever I was home at night. We would pick up a book and read it, and as they got older, we would read chapter books. And one of the things that I like to do is I would take them to a bookstore and be like, "All right, go find a bunch of books. We'll sit down and we'll kind of look through them at the store, and whatever one stuck is the one we bought." And then we went through and read it, and I noticed that as the interest in the book was there, the kids did develop an interest in it and a passion for it
Yeah.
better, and they did develop a lot of things better because school, and not to be political or whatnot, but the school system hasn't evolved in 100 years,
No, it's
and
so
And one of
ridiculous.
and one of the things school systems do is they don't take into account, and they can't take into account, the individual learning styles of everybody because there's just so many
Yeah.
kids. It has to be standardized. It has to be done a certain way. And a lot of times that standardization in the school system and the fact that it's still working off of a 100-year-old model fails a lot of students. So the fact that you
Yeah.
are taking A Town and kind of teaching her and focusing a lot of stuff around her interest will only benefit her educational and mental growth because she does have that built-in interest, that built-in sort of like connection to the material. So I think that's great.
Yeah. It makes such a difference. And then we got her a ferret.
Ferrets!
Her
Yes!
ferret named Ninja,
Ninja.
just to have a companion.
Everybody needs a
And
companion.
she is the absolute best ferret.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. She's so tolerant with her. I mean, she's a 7-year-old girl, right?
Yeah.
So we were like, this is kind of an advanced pet for her, but she's a bit mature for her
Hmm.
age too. So it's like, and we've had ferrets. I had 2 ferrets
Ferrets are
years
awesome.
ago. So like I had experience with them, and I was like, well, we'll get it, see how it goes, and feed her a raw diet.
Nice.
She is the fluffiest ferret I've ever felt. Like, it changed her fur,
Right.
and so she's like this little soft, squeezable little plushie almost.
Well, for people who don't know, ferrets are carnivores and insectivores. They don't eat ferret food.
Yeah, and they put wheat and all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff in the ferret food, and she also poops a lot less.
Mm-hmm.
So people will be like, "Oh, ferrets poop so much and they're so stinky." Her smell and her poop have gone way down. I'm not gonna say
Yeah.
it's not there at all. She's still got a musk, but it's not
Yeah.
overpowering. Like, it matters what you feed them. And my daughter just carries her around with her everywhere, right? And you can potty train ferrets.
Yep.
So like she's got her little area that she goes and whatever. And they're not the kind of animal that's very easy to let just run loose. You still have to be kind of on them because they get into so much mischief. So she has a big cage that she's in when we can't actively be with her.
Right.
But she's so tolerant of Aisling. She licks her and is just affectionate. She'll lick me and Brian too. And like to watch her little personality go from, when she was a little kit to now we've had her for a couple. She's getting to be close to a year now.
Right.
And how she'll like notice she'll be playing with Aisling and then I'll come in the room and she'll stop what she's doing and come running up to me and like jump at my leg and basically call me out and be like, then back away and wait for me to like come play with her.
Right.
So there's this cute little personality that's developing and this fun little playfulness. I mean, all ferrets have that, to an extent, but there's something special about this one, I think, in terms of her becoming part of the family, like finding her little niche and understanding how much she can get away with. And I can't say that my other ferrets didn't do this either because they did in their ways, but like she is rougher with me and Brian. She'll bite harder and claw more than she will with Aisling.
Yeah.
Because, Aisling doesn't like that as much. Yeah. And so it's, our other ferrets that we had them when we owned our house and we did let them free range. And they were more like they had each other. So their bond with us was different.
Right.
This is a solitary ferret. And I was a little worried about that, but
yeah, that can be tough.
But when we got her, she had bites all over her from the place, and she like wanted out of there so bad. And when we got her home, the overwhelming feeling that I got, I'm a bit of an empath myself. The overwhelming feeling that I got from this ferret was one of relief. You saved me. And I don't ever get off of her that she's lonely. Aisling's with her all the time.
Right.
And she's happy. That's all I can say. So, and I know, like, because I had 2 ferrets, and then one of them ended up dying. She got cancer and died, and we didn't want to get another one. We weren't in a place where getting another ferret was possible. And so we only had the one for a while, and he did just fine. Like, he had us, he had the dog, he had the cats, and now Ninja has Aisling.
Yeah, it's got you guys. That's cool. Yeah, we've got Nick's, and then on the farm we have Karma's here. It's trying Amanda's dog, and then there's the goats and the pigs and the chickens. And I don't like any of those motherfuckers. I do not vibe with chickens and goats and pigs. Like I'm like, I love y'all.
Chickens are so ornery.
Don't ask me with the chickens
for a while, and they were I love them. I love their orneriness.
But I'll get down with the dogs.
Things, which is why I love you.
I know, because I'm all gray and crotchety, and ornery is all get out. But I mean, it's great that like seeing like us growing up from where we were, from like we were back in the day gaming and whatnot, and seeing how our paths diverge, and then seeing you become a mother, because like people will know it. You were like, I know kids are a no-go area. You were like, fuck that, not happening. And then it happened.
Yep.
Yeah, and then it happened.
She was planned. She was very planned.
Right. But like seeing the transformation, not only to you becoming an amazing mother and now a published author, it's been awesome, because seeing what my friends and people I consider family really come into their own is one of those things that makes me want to continue to do what I do and push harder and grind harder, like with streaming and podcasting, and everybody out here has been beating me to death since your book came out about my book. Oh, literally every day now since like Amanda and everybody out here has got the book, they're like, so when are you going to get back to writing a book? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. They're like, that's not an excuse. Nikki can do it, and she's got kids. And I'm like, you know what? Don't start with me, okay? Just stop. So in a way, I love it because it shows that people are invested. But
Sure,
seeing
that
you do
encouragement is
this
everything.
is, yeah, exactly. Seeing you being able to pull it off and all the things that you go through, I'm like, yeah, maybe I should revisit it. Maybe on some of the downtime when I'm just like vegging, I could be, plunking away at something, whether it's a sentence or a word. And I think one of the key things of advice that you gave me, that if there are any potential writers listening or watching right now, or when you catch it on the VOD, one of the best pieces of advice that Nikki's given me is, it doesn't matter how much you write as long as you write something.
Yeah. There were many a night, way too many. Like I literally ended up just writing maybe a sentence or a paragraph, and it was one more than I had before. 'Cause sometimes you'll write and then you just delete it all.
Yeah,
Be like,
I'm
"Nope,
horrible at that.
that's not
I'm
where it
horrible at
goes."
that.
And then other times you find your groove, and I'm somebody who gets maybe a little bit too meticulous on what exactly the sentence says.
Mm-hmm.
The detail of it and getting it just perfect. And then things like the blurb, you have to.
Right, you
It's
got to
so
dial it in.
important. I have to take this mammoth story and truncate it into something that'll fit on the back of this book. And if you see, let me see. So this is the not quite final version. This is Amazon will put this not for resale
Right.
on the cover. But you can see all this text.
Mm-hmm.
Two different cameras, so I'm a little bit disoriented here.
Yeah, it's unforced.
I barely fit it, and this was cutting and cutting.
Yeah.
I worked on this blurb for months.
Well,
Years, really, because there's like 4 other versions of the blurb out there that I scrapped entirely.
So the blurb is the tease, though. You got to get the tease right.
Mm-hmm.
If you
I was
don't
wondering if I should read. I don't know.
if you don't show enough leg, you ain't gonna get the interest for sure. And the blurb, like in the intro video, we used the blurb. Haba did the voiceover of the blurb, and the blurb.
Can't wait to
Like,
hear it.
yeah, I'm gonna send you I'm gonna send you the Google Drive link that you can download it yourself, and you'll be like, you have it and use it for whatever you
I
want
can
for
thank
promotional
her
material.
and thank Chris.
Habit Actor's the shit, and Chris did it. I was gonna add some stuff to it, but when I started kind of fiddling around with it in the lab, I was like, it doesn't add to it. Like, I was gonna add some ad libs in the back. Like, there's a point where the word sinister pops up. I was gonna do some echo and reverb of the word sinister in the back, but as I listened to it, it took away. So I didn't want to add to it because it didn't serve it. So I think the way Habit did it and the way Chris did it was excellent, and I think the blurb especially sets up the book really well. I think all the cutting and the reworking of it, I think really, really succinctly kind of grabs interest.
Yeah,
And
I like how it turned out.
yeah, and when I wrote my review of your book, I didn't want to write because I could have wrote this, like some people wrote long reviews, and I found them really helpful, but I felt for me the best way I could do a review is to add to the blurb, get a little bit more of the, hey, come take a bite of this. So when I wrote,
you did a great job.
Thanks.
I was like, I want to read this book.
That's what I wanted. That's the kind of approach I wanted, because I'm like, I could break it down and I could write real in depth, but for me, because a lot of times guys don't like female protagonists. Sometimes a lot of guys don't. I like all kinds of protagonists. So if I was gonna write anything to catch anyone's interest, how could I make it to where it's like they want to eat it? And that's where I came up with my review. Is like mine is more of that, like, dip into it. I live a little bit of a mystery in there, and some word choices to kind of whet their appetite to maybe they dive in. So I know what you mean by trimming out the blur, because I wrote my review like 6 times. I have 6 different
Yeah, and
versions
that's
of it.
just the review, right?
Yeah, that's just the
Yeah.
review. That was just the review for a friend to try and help her out, to get people to look at it. So like when you say you cut out shit on the blurb, 100% I feel you, because I got like 6 versions of the review. But I think you crushed it overall. I think overall you crushed it as an author. You've crushed it on the publishing side. You're doing a lot of the marketing stuff. Your Twitter is amazing. The little custom images of your reviews that you've done on Facebook are super dope. Because when I see them, I'm like, I'm gonna go read the review now. Because you cut out a little bit of the review, and I'm like, I'm gonna go read that review now. So I think in all aspects of it, you hit it out the park. I mean, it's your first novel, so there's things you're gonna want to improve on, right? For the subsequent
Mhm.
novels, because you said this is a 9-book series, and that's one of the questions I wanted to
Yes.
ask is, what's next? What's the next step before we jump into the happy ending?
It's the next step. Well, the next step after I'm done with this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a deep breath and get back into book 2.
You're like,
I
fuck
started
that.
writing it. I started writing it earlier this year. I've been
Mm-hmm.
plunking around and playing with it, but my focus has been so taken up on just the publishing process and
Mm-hmm.
getting it out there and everything. So that I'm looking forward to, like, diving back in.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I have feedback and people, actually like it and it makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
that's giving me some fuel to go on to the next book.
Yeah. And I don't really have any critiques, because you know me, I'm not just gonna sit there and glow about it. I like to be helpful in that way. But honestly, I can't think of any real like critique on it, because I think for what it is, I think it's well done, it's well put together, and I don't Amanda might actually be better at it. Amanda and Bernadette might have better critique, because when I read it, I enjoyed it as a reader. And if I go back and read it again, I might have more feedback. But right now, I don't really have a critique, because I think for a story that I don't normally read in a genre I don't normally read, I think it hits beats for me, and as it's something that I would recommend without hesitation, not because you're my friend. Like, I'm going to recommend it anyway because you're my friend, but if I was to take our relationship, our dynamic aside, this is a book that I would highly recommend to anybody, because anybody who's interested in horror, who's got the stomach to handle it, because it gets there. The caveat is it's dark, and there's some foul shit that goes down in all the
Yeah, like
best ways.
it starts out more almost coming of age,
Mm-hmm.
YA,
Yeah, a little bit.
because you've got 2 teen protagonists who are ghost hunters, but it becomes very much horror
Yep.
as the story goes along.
But yeah, I
Have
would
no
definitely,
fear.
I would definitely give it my highest recommendation for like I said, if I was to remove our relationship and all our years together, I can't give it a critique, because I started to. When I started to read it, I wanted to pick it apart and kind of give you some whatnot, but I just sort of fell into the reading of it. Like I couldn't
You
I
got
couldn't
sucked in.
Yeah, I got sucked in because I couldn't critique it. I was like, I need to see where this ride goes
Yeah,
initially.
and I think that's something that um is something that I encourage people to do just in general with any media of any kind, is to not have expectations. Let the stories take you where they will. And I think you'll
Right.
always have a better time than if you're expecting certain things, because there are twists in this. It's not going to go where you think it's going to go.
Oh no. No. It definitely does
At
not.
many different points.
Mm-hmm.
Like it starts out seeming, oh, well, this is going to be your standard ghost story,
Mm-hmm.
right? It isn't.
No, it's
Let's put
not.
it that way.
But yeah.
I do have a question that I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to get to because I
100%.
asked people to ask me questions,
Sure,
and I want to
let's
make
go.
sure that I honor that
100%.
before we
We
move
got
on.
time.
So Michelle, my cousin Michelle,
Yay!
yes, who has been an absolute dynamite supporter of mine from the get-go with this. She asks, "What do you do when you write? Do you have a ritual, a lucky chair, music, sounds of mating locusts on repeat?"
Creepy, but okay.
Naturally, that's how I get into writing. Well, I do have my chair.
Locusts.
I just got this. It is super comfy chair.
Mine's
And
better.
it's called the Alistar
Nice.
is the name of it if anybody wants to look it up. But I also find that highly amusing because there's a character in my series named Alistair. So now I get to sit in the Alistar chair and write Alistair, and he comes in heavily in book 2. So I find that very, very amusing, but it's super comfortable. Highly recommend.
I will try and find the link of it. We'll shoot it out there when we put up the YouTube. We'll put a link to the chair and stuff in there, so if people want to check it out.
And I got a new desk. You can see it a bit behind me. That's sort of my gift to myself for finishing, because how I write and have been writing is wherever I can find the space. I have a laptop and a keyboard. I have a little wireless keyboard.
Nice.
And so it's just wherever you can squirrel away the time. And in terms of rituals, I will often listen to music right before I get into a scene. I'll have like some things that make sense for either that character or songs that just are back in the background. Sometimes I'll have music on in the background when I'm drafting a scene and just sort of getting it out. And then whenever I have to actually really concentrate and get into the character, I need silence. I can't have any disturbance of any kind, or it'll suck me out of their head.
Okay.
And so, I say that it's written from Amy's perspective, but every character I jump into their head so that I know how they would respond to what's just been done.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I 100%.
So there's times when, I had to jump into Kayla's head for a while, and Daniel's head or Mother's head or whatever. And so there's that aspect to it. And let's see what else. Sound of meaning. What do we do when you write? Yeah, I guess that answers the question.
I think you answered it pretty succinctly.
And I don't know if there's any other questions. I put this out on Twitter too.
Yeah, no. None in chat really. The chat's been commenting on stuff, and it's all been mostly positive. There was, Crail said when we were talking about the writing whatever you can, just write. They said that they were asked about that, so yeah, we handled that. And no, I think you're doing good. If you have questions from Twitter, let's hit a few.
I'm gonna go check. Oh, no questions.
Okay.
I am bad on Twitter.
I have a question real quick before we go into the happy ending. You're an author. I'm a streamer and like sort of content creator who dabbles in writing. What is your perspective on social media being an author? Where mine is like from a streaming perspective and a content creation, like I have to interact with certain groups and try to reach out with companies, but like, is it different as an author? Like, how do you look at social media?
A necessary evil.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
Is
I
what I
agree.
would say.
I hate
because you put a lot of effort into a post, and then it may or may not gain any traction at all, and there are a lot of reasons why that might be.
Right.
I think personally, having had several businesses now on Facebook, they definitely want you to pay them
Mm-hmm.
to really show anything that you're going to be making money off of
Right.
to anyone. So anything that I put links into, you'll often see me put the actual link to buy my book in the comments rather than in
Right.
the main thing, because I feel like it doesn't reach as many people. And I had this just happen with a friend of mine who I interact with on a fairly regular basis on Facebook, and he did not see my launch post on my storyteller group. So I have a group, for those that don't know, it's Nikki DeKeuster Storyteller. And it's for anybody who's just been interested in this journey and following me over the years, a place for them to gather so that when I launched, they would know. And so this is somebody who has joined my group, who actively posts in my group and shares my things from this group, that it took 2 days for him to be able to see that post.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just unacceptable.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? So that's a Facebook problem. It's not like if this was like a page, just like because I also have a publishing page for Phoenix Rose Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bunch of likes on that page too.
Speaking of that,
And
I think I like that, or I haven't liked. I know I need to. I think I did. I don't know. I gotta double check.
well, and that they want you to pay to boost the post to your own people who have liked it.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a page for your business as opposed to a group,
Mm-hmm.
that's the difference. And so there's a reason I went with a group. You know, for one, it kind of fosters that sense of community.
Connection.
But
Yeah.
for two, it's like, well, this is a group, so it's more likely to actually show up in their feed
Mm-hmm.
without me having to pay for that pleasure, right?
Right.
And they do, like, I'll post, I posted everything on Phoenix Rose Publishing, and the very first post that I ever did on there hit more people, at least they said that they showed it to more people than I had that liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had like 110 people that liked the group or something around there. And they showed it to 130 in the little thing. And I was like, oh, so they went above and beyond, maybe showed it to some friends of the people or whatever. That's great. Next post that I did, like 11 people saw it. And they had a big old thing saying, yeah, it's a nice post you got there. Be a shame if nobody saw it.
Oh, fuck those guys.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's an extortion racket. And I, I had an astrology business for many years and I ran into the same exact thing. So in that case, I was doing daily content for Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I would do a daily forecast for the astrology.
Yeah, I remember
And
reading
so
those.
I am sitting here making a reason for people to want to come to Facebook. So like I am doing Facebook a favor,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they reward me by expecting me to boost those daily posts. Not an insignificant amount of money either.
No, not
Like
at all.
I want like $15 to boost a post to my own followers.
Fuck that shit.
Yeah, so it's disheartening. It gets you down because it's like you're constantly creating this content and then hardly anybody sees it. Even if they actively want to.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you have to do it too at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like now, if you can get into other social media platforms, I happen to be on Facebook just because it's
It's your
where I
dominant
landed,
platform, yeah.
and I've tried a couple of other ones, and it's just they don't resonate as much. So I am actively always looking for something else, right? I've been dabbling with Discord lately. I think I might have had gotten my issues figured out with that, but
mm-hmm.
no, it's just convenient. It's convenient to be able to have everything, your personal stuff, your business stuff, everything all in one platform.
Yeah.
But
The platforms I use right now mostly are Twitter and TikTok. I'm trying to like get that up because I notice like you said, when I post on Facebook, it's dead. Like I get like no traction. But like if
or you'll get traction days later. The same thing happened with some of your stuff, a lot of your stuff. Even though we interact all the time, I'll see it 3 days later.
Yeah, and
I'm like, well, he was live 3 days ago. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, I did.
know?
I did the Twitter video for you coming on the show, and that got some likes and retweets. But I put that video up on TikTok, and it's got over like 100 views or something. Like it,
That is crazy.
yeah. So like
Wow.
for me, social media it really depends on just putting it out there. And I found that the more I put it out there, even though I hate it and I think I'm bad at it, it's paying dividends. And I think
It does. And if you reach even one person,
yep,
that makes it worth it.
yeah, 100%. And also too, I had this fear initially with social media, and I don't know if you did either. Of I didn't want to tweet at people. I didn't want to respond to people's tweets because who the fuck am I? Right? Why would they care that I made a comment on something they tweeted? But like you said, you have to get to a point where you have no fucks left and just do it, because if you don't do it, you're gonna miss out on an opportunity.
Yes.
Which is why I
Well,
kind of jumped on TikTok.
yeah, I mean, Facebook has also been absolutely great for meeting a ton of people. A
Mhm.
lot of my biggest supporters came from Facebook.
Mhm.
People I've met in writing groups over the years. And so that's a beautiful thing too. So it's got this light and dark side to
Yeah,
it, right?
everything does. Yeah, 100%.
And it's nice to be able to have that central place to send people.
Mhm.
If they don't always see everything, they're going to see some of it, and they can at least message you and whatnot. So love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
But TikTok is something that I just joined not too long ago,
I'm gonna have to follow you.
and I don't understand it.
I'm learning it. Like, because I have a series I do on TikTok where I talk about RPGs that you should play, like shit that's not D&D. Because apparently I have this reputation of I hate D&D. Like, I don't like vanilla D&D. I don't find it interesting anymore. So I took that and started doing like a series of videos where I'm like, here's a cool RPG that's not D&D you might want to check out if you're bored with D&D. And that got some traction. And then I folded that into like indie video games, and the indie video game got no views whatsoever. I was like, wait a minute. I was getting hundreds of views on the same shit. And
Yeah,
then
it makes you wonder if like certain companies pay them
yeah.
to promote these things and
I
then
don't
to
know.
maybe
So
not so much the other.
I don't know TikTok either. I'm learning it. I'm trying. But I think that's important. One of the best pieces of advice that I could give anybody before we go into the happy ending is just learn. Keep learning, whatever it is, streaming, content creating, writing, cooking, crafting, whatever it is. Always learn something. Always keep learning. Watch a tutorial, read an article, look at a creator or an author that you know, I wouldn't necessarily say look up to, but like admire and hold their work in esteem, and try and learn from that experience of whatever it is. Because if you don't learn, you don't grow, I think, in my personal experience.
Yes, I would say so. That's been one of the things, and we didn't get into this, but I've had a lot of health issues over the years. They've been pretty gnarly.
Yeah, me too.
And one of the things that kept me going actually was, this book,
Mm,
plunking away at it, giving me the hope that I would finish it, and only I can finish this book.
right.
Nobody else can finish my book. Brian got a
Only
hold of it.
you have the power.
It would go in an entirely different direction.
Hmm.
So Brian knows the overarching where this is going because I troubleshoot off of him
Right.
and whatnot. He's my very first reader of anything that I write. So,
Can we get a Brian
it's important
remix?
to have that hope point. What's that?
Right. I was like, can we get a Brian remix of the book?
Right. Well, he did write a little story about Amy from her mother's perspective of all things.
Wow.
In the Holiday Spirit anthology.
Yeah, I saw that
my
he got
writing group.
published too. Yeah.
Yep. So he published that, and it's just a cute little story, and it's a little bit more based on the game
Right.
version of these characters, but it's a little bit of a glimpse into the
Right.
future for Amy.
Nice.
Oh,
nice,
and speaking
nice.
of, before we move on to the
Mhm.
happy ending, I wanted
Yeah.
to say, so I've got this little novelette called
Mhm.
Red String. And this is free for anybody who signs up for my newsletter. If you go to my website, which I think will probably be somewhere in the show notes or whatnot, but
Yeah, we'll put
NikkiDeKeuster.com.
it on the YouTube, and I'm gonna tweet out a bunch of stuff after the show too.
Okay. So this is a little fun story. It's about 10,000 words, and it ties into my main book,
Mhm.
just say. So you can test out, see if you like my writing style.
A little
And
appetizer.
it's called a reader magnet. So this is one of the tools in the toolkit of self-published authors, and
Okay.
the traditional publishers do stuff like this too. But it's a free book that you can put out there and get people to know you, your style, if they like you, and then ideally they follow you into whatever series or whatever other books you have.
hmm
So cute little. This is not a love story. So it's like it's more thriller. This is very much more fast paced
hmm
because it's a shorter story.
Right.
Um, there's some elements of horror and a little bit of sexy times in it too. So
Spicy.
it gives you a taste of Nikki DeKeuster
hmm
and her style.
Nice, nice, nice. Well, hey, you're crushing it. Do you want to stick around for the happy ending, or do you got to dip out?
Well, I do need to run to the ladies' room and powder my nose.
Okay.
So I will come back if
Okay.
that's okay. I
Yeah.
thought I was going to do a happy ending too, but if we're running late, like I can just not do
It's up to
mine.
you. Can you stick around? I mean, we're at 3.
Sure.
We're about 2:55 right now.
I can stay around for a bit
All
longer.
right.
Just
Yeah.
I need to run to the bathroom and then I'll be
I can
back.
vamp.
But
Actually,
you
what we'll
can do your
do,
thing.
what we'll do while you're in the bathroom, we'll run your intro video again, so people who didn't see it at the beginning of the stream can catch it.
Okay, I like that idea.
All right.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Yep. All right. Well, she runs to the powder room. Well, those of you that kind of jumped in late, we ran a little guest intro video, narrated by a good friend of ours, Haberdactor. That is the blurb of Nikki's book. So I'm going to show that to you. And then when Nikki gets back, we'll dive into the happy ending. We'll wrap up. Thank you for sticking around. We're running long. It's a great conversation, though. I want to make sure we do that. So here's the intro.
That stupid, rotted old barn in backwoods Maine starts out as just another place to feed my best friend's insatiable ghost hunting habit. Until I'm inexplicably lost for the first time in emotions that aren't mine. An animalistic fear that never really leaves me. On some level that's smart, I should be afraid, especially when people's moods start swinging at my whim. But you know, it's also kind of fun, if you don't count the heart attacks, fatal job promotions, and choco tacos with criminally wasted potential left in my wake. Then there's the delicious bit of trouble from down the way. He's emotionally silent, but breaks the sound barrier on my other 5 senses. I can't affect what I can't feel, so he's safe, right? Am I? The pressure of keeping everyone's emotions at bay is cracking my jury-rigged mental wall into a Cheshire grin. The question is, whose grin is it? Mine, yours, or something curiously sinister? As reality twists into a labyrinthian spiral, each step I take brings a little more tragedy and a little less me. I'll have to double back on my fading footprints and find what passes for the truth before my sixth sense becomes my only sense.
So welcome back. That was the intro video that we ran. It is the narration of the back of Nikki's book to some awesome video editing from Chris. For those of you that are new to the show, we end on what's called the happy ending. And what it is Chris came up with this concept of doing something positive at the end of the show to shine a light on positive news or happy stories, so that when you leave the show, you can say, wow, that was nice. And it also gives us a way to highlight stories that we think need a little more shine for whatever platform we have. We wanted to shine a light on it. And as soon as Nikki gets back, we'll dip into it. But I want to say, if you guys don't already follow Nikki on Twitter, it's You can reach out to her on Twitter. We'll plug her stuff at the end, but reach out to her on Twitter, on her Facebook. We're gonna post up her website and stuff like that, so that you guys have all the resources to get connected with her and whatnot. And hopefully you've been enjoying the show. So if you have any questions before Nikki gets back, feel free to put them in chat, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability or whatnot. Otherwise, we can just hang out and chill and do whatever. I hope you guys are enjoying the show. For those of you that have followed the channel, thank you so much. I hope you guys are enjoying the content. Up above me is the website where you can find Nikki's book, and in the chat you can find that as well. But I gotta say, this has been a really good interview. I think a really good conversation, because it's not really an interview. I think Nikki's crushed it. I think she crushed it with the book. Definitely go out and get you a copy of that. Look, I'm shilling for you. I'm shilling for you as I vamp.
Thank you. That's very nice. I did want to say,
Go ahead.
I didn't get into this too much, and I'm a little surprised that I didn't go in this direction, but thinking about hustle culture. So
Okay.
you asked about book 2 and when it will be out, or and people have asked when it's going to be out. And like it took me 7 years to write this one. I don't think, and by the way, that's average for a novel,
Right.
for a first novel. So just to give people context for that, I don't think it'll take another 7 years. I've learned a lot and been through a lot of
Right.
processes. I'm in a very different place now. I don't have a young daughter anymore.
Mhm.
You know,
Plus, the major world building is done.
yeah, and that's something like for this first novel, it had to hold so much weight,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is the foundational pillar. So the origins of all of her abilities, I had to really get them right
Mm-hmm.
for it to hold the rest of what's going to happen in a way that makes sense.
Right.
So, but there's this culture in anything really, just to kind of like spit out as much as you can as quickly as you can.
Right.
Like hustle, 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 hustle. And I refuse.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to write this book as quickly as I can, as quickly as I can.
Right.
Um,
It'll be ready when it's ready.
yeah. And you want the highest quality product that you can get anyway. So if you rush people, you're going to get a rush product, Now there are writers that can churn stuff out quickly, but I've been watching this for a while, been in the author world for a while, and they burn out. Those people that are churning out books so quickly, they wipe out, or it becomes all of their life.
Right.
All consuming. And that's fine if that's what they want to do. There are people that do it and they're successful at it, and I don't have beef with that. But it's not for everyone. And everyone has their different style. So we got to get away from this hustle culture of you got to be working all the time. It's so toxic. And I burned myself out years ago. It's one of the reasons I got so sick and had all my health issues. I was going to grad school and full time and working 3 jobs to try to make it in my field. And it just
Political science at one point.
Political science, environmental studies.
Yep.
And it was insane.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have kids then. No.
Right. She says kids plural because she's talking about the husband too.
Yeah. I promised myself I wouldn't do that again.
Right.
Or anything.
Yeah.
I'm grounded now with this in a way, but I still feel that pressure. It's like, oh crap, I gotta get it. Now people have read it and it's out there and they're expecting the next
pressure
one.
To perform for sure.
Yeah, so it's a different area than when I was just sort of in my bubble of other writers, maybe showing them a little here and there, my alpha readers who got early versions,
Right.
So let's as a collective get away from hustle culture.
Pump the brakes.
Don't expect authors or content creators to have the next big thing in a half a second.
Well, that's with me too. Like I made a conscious effort to only do 4 days a week. so that I could have a couple days with the kids, and I only do 4 to 5 hours a stream, so that I have
And
the
just
rest
for
of the day.
yourself too. Like
Mhm,
it's not just only about family, your friends,
mhm,
and all of that. Sometimes you just need days where you're in your sweatpants and you're not worrying about anything. Now, as an
right?
author, this is now circumstances have put me in a place in my life where this is also my job.
Yep, me too.
So that's where I think uh, it'll go quicker. I got my
Mhm,
desk now. Like it's a different mentality now that it's published and I'm not just plunking away. And I didn't know what to expect. I mean, people could have been like, I don't know what this is, and completely all ghosted me and never gotten any sort of review or
mhm.
whatever. People like it.
It's good shit.
Now they're encouraging me.
It's good soup.
Oh, and man, it has disturbed some people. Like,
Yes. I will say this for those of you that are watching either live or the VOD or you're listening to the audiobook, the story is very, very, very can be very disturbing. It is very dark in some spots. It hits on a lot of themes that a lot of people could find unsettling. But
not for the faint of heart,
yes,
is what's been said many times.
I will say if you can work through your uncomfortability, your unease with it, you will find a very rewarding story there with rich characters, immense world building, unique perspectives on emotion. So even though it is super dark and it is super unnerving, it's also very rewarding. And I think that's
Well, and
another caveat to our another feather in your cap.
that's another reason I chose horror as a genre. Like
Mm-hmm.
you go into horror knowing you're going to be disturbed.
Yeah.
Right?
All right.
It's the contract that you make.
I don't want to hold you hostage for too much longer. I know your husband wants you, and your daughter probably needs some mommy cuddles. And your ferret's like, bitch, when am I getting pets? So let's dive into the happy ending. Do you have a happy ending article that you want to talk about, or do you just want to riff off of what I
I
talk about?
I do. Let
Okay,
me see if I can pull it up here.
sure.
Let's see. Well, I can't find it right now.
Okay.
But it's basically I don't need to read it anyway, but it's about how China is setting aside like they're building a forest the size
Yes,
of Belgium. Did you
yes, I
see that
saw that
story?
article. Yes, I did.
And I was wondering, I was like, is he gonna pick this one too?
No, it was in my list as I was going through it, but yeah, I chose to go another way. I'm actually going to pull the
So
article up for you
okay.
and put it in chat.
Uh yeah, so it's over the next 5 years they're gonna be building forests up the size of Belgium, one each year. So five Belgium sized forests.
National parks, yeah.
And it's it's a good thing. Like I don't know all the ins and outs. Knowing politics like I do and then the fuckery that goes on.
The
I'm sure
fuckery.
there's more to it.
Mhm.
But this is the happy ending. So we'll just stick to focusing on the good. That people are taking climate change seriously.
Mhm.
My degree is in environmental studies
Oh yeah.
and I have studied this issue ad nauseum. And the lack of inaction is more than concerning.
Yeah.
It's dire.
It really is. The article states that it's 14,000 square miles or 35,000 square kilometers of new forest that will go up every year, particularly in drought-prone regions of the north and west of China. This feat over the next 5 years will increase forest coverage by coverage in the country by less than 2%. But in a culture like China, which for decades has existed of just wrecking shit, it's a
Mhm.
huge,
It's a huge step
yeah,
in the right direction.
yeah, it's a massive thing. And by putting forests up the size of Belgium, it's definitely going to reduce their carbon emission because, for those of you that know, trees take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. So the more forests and green you have, the less shit's going to be in the air you breathe. And if we learned
Y-
anything from the Olympics, China has a really bad air quality.
Yeah. So it's definitely a positive step in the right direction.
Yeah, and then
It'd also be
also,
growing a lot more hemp.
yeah,
Sucks a lot out.
yes, it
It's
does.
very useful. I've been
The-
saying that since the 90s. I'm like,
yes, you
grow
have.
hemp. Hemp.
You have been with it. I was like, hemp is the way. Hemp is the way. But the article also states that the planted forest will increase the habitat ranges of Siberian tigers and the Gobi bear and several of the most endangered species that China has. This forest project will definitely give them some habitat to work from. So, yeah, great article, amazing. I picked one too, but I kind of want to do Chris's more because he's not here because I like his and I think it ties in with the animal theme more. So. This one talks about a family of crows that have left gifts for somebody who's taking care of them.
Yes.
So the way the article breaks down is, after years of helping a crow family, a man was left mind-blowing gifts over in return. So this dude, Stuart Delaquist, has been feeding and looking after this family of crows. At one point, two of the chicks fell out of the nest, and he rescued them and returned them. And over the years, he's fed and looked after these crows. Well, recently, after 6 years, he received gifts. He got two, looks like pine branches that were wrapped in pop can tabs, and they were given to him from the birds. It says,
They made them.
yeah, they made them and put them where he would find them. He says, one day I noticed this straight away because I'm kind of sensitive about trash going where it belongs, but the pull tab being threaded onto a sprig of fir wasn't normal, so I hung on to it. The next day, he was offered a second soda tab decorated branch as a courtesy of the crows, and he was stunned. So, Chris and I have talked about animal intelligence on the show quite a bit. Like you said, you watch. This is just another reaffirming that, like, our animal brethren are not just the dumb animals that we can hunt for sport or slaughter or whatever. So,
Oh, yeah.
and the fact that a family of crows that have been taken care of for 6 years gave back to the human that helped them is it warms the cockles of my grinchy heart. Let's say that, because crows are amazing animals, and the fact that they took time out of their crow lives to, like, give this man a gift and decorate him, it just shows that animals aren't what we think they are or what we were taught to think they are, and we should be paying more attention to our environment and our animal brethren because they go and do shit like this, right? Or there was the story a couple months ago of the humpback whale who saved the scuba diver from great white sharks. Like, I don't know if you saw that story, but like a humpback just like rolled up on this scuba diver and kept like playing with her and moving her around, and she didn't know why, and she was freaking out. And then, like, when she got up out of the water, she saw the great whites who were like, "We're getting a free meal." And the humpback was like, "No, baby girl, I got you." And I think it was a female humpback too, if I remember right. So it was like, girls stick together. So having crows, yeah, they like, girl power is the thing. But I love how that story highlights animal logic and animal intelligence, because for so long, you and I are a little older. We grew up where, like, animals were just, they were animals. They were hunted for game. They were hunted for sport. We really didn't think much of their personalities. And now stories like this show that animals are not just animals. They have an intellect. They have a sense of the world around them, not just, hey, I'm a crow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, I think it's
I
dope.
have we didn't go into this, but there's two great white Pyrenees dogs in the book. They're
Oh, yeah,
Caleb's.
they are. Yeah.
So if you're a dog lover, a little
Great
something for
Pyrenees.
you.
Great Pyrenees, big floof dogs. The big floofy dogs.
The big fluffy dogs. And
They are.
yes, they get their
They're big
fluff and their
sweeties.
fur everywhere.
They're big sweeties too. So.
And they serve a couple of, like, minor functions to move the story along.
A little bit.
But I had to learn about what kind of dogs she might have. It's, so it's like they shed a bit too much for my liking.
Right.
I think, like, there's cat people and dog people. I'm a ferret person.
Yep, I'm a ferret and dog person. I'm not a chicken guy. I'm not a goat guy. I'm not a pig guy.
I'm a
I'm
chicken.
definitely not a cat guy. But
They're
hey,
so great.
I thank you for sticking around. You've been an amazing guest. So this is the point in time where you tell everybody where they can find you, where they can get at you, where they can get the book. Baby, shill like a motherfucker. Advertise like shameless whores. Let's go.
All right. Well, I've got these 2 shiny books. Look at how cute they look together.
They are. They're shiny as shit.
So I will say that the Red String is free as an ebook when you sign up for my newsletter at nikkideceuster.com.
Mm-hmm.
And it ties into the spiral, but they can be read in either order. So if you've already read Spiral,
right,
you can read this, and vice versa.
Oop, wrong link.
I do have it. I do have it available in paperback too, obviously. Oh, did I go freeze out on you?
No, there was a glitch on my end. You're fine.
I
That's
also
the right
have
link.
a storyteller group on Facebook, and if you go to my website, that's linked there too, and I'm fairly active there. So if you want to come get in on any discussion, we can start a spoiler thread. I have another subgroup for people who are like my super supporters, and there's been some talk in there and some catharsis, some what the hell's wrong with you, Nikki?
Yep, there has been for sure.
So, and I do have a Twitter handle. I'm on there occasionally. It's not.
She'll be on there more.
A lot, but
we'll get her there.
We'll get her there. On the Discord.
Yes, she's on
at the Rookery.
Yep, she's on Discord. Again. She's on our Discord, so we're gonna get that up there. You actually bringing you on inspired me to open up the Discord a little more. So I want to bring more creative types that aren't streamers on. So I'm probably gonna tweet out the Discord. But yeah, Discord. You got to get on Twitter more, girl.
Twitter is such a hole.
I know, but it's useful.
It's even worse than Facebook because you're limited on what you can say.
Yep, I know.
And I don't. I mean, look at the size of my book. Do I like to be limited?
Not at all. Not at all. But
can you imagine? Okay, so you're running a game and your player comes to you and they're like, "Here's my backstory."
Nope. I'd have been like, pare it down to 1 page for me.
Here's the blurb.
Right. But girl, I'm so proud of you. You've crushed it. The book is phenomenal. You're just an awesome person, and I loved having you on. I'm sorry that Chris had some personal stuff and he couldn't be here, but we're definitely going to get you back.
Maybe we can do another episode at some point that's a spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler cast. Yeah, let's do that. Also, Chris and I are talking about doing an end of the year show where we do like a 12-hour like Drunk Tank live stream where people that have guested on the show can float in and out and just bullshit and hang out. So if you want to do that,
be interesting. Yeah, hook me up.
It won't be like a formal thing. It won't be like a formal thing. We'll just have the chat open and we'll just be bullshitting, hanging out, playing games and talking. So definitely, you crushed it. You're amazing. The book is awesome.
You're doing amazing things too, I want to say. Just to kind of kick it back at you. You know, you've been through a lot the last couple of months, and to get the show back up and running.
Yeah. I had a lot of help with that. And Chris is amazing and doing a lot of the back end stuff. And Amanda and Troy and Bernadette getting the workshop up and running because we had some. It was touch and go for a while, and I was having some real problems, and a lot of people helped get that back together. And then everybody in the community, when the laptop died, building the new computer. So
people believe in you, and you should believe in yourself too, right?
I do.
Maybe.
But I am DoxRyan. You can follow me on Twitter. You can reach out to me on TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff. I'm always here on Twitch 4 nights a week. I do guest spots with other streamers when I'm not doing my stuff. So you might hear me on like a voiceover stream with Dread Pirate Roberts, we've got projects coming up with him. I am a GM. I do have RPG shows coming up, but they won't be hosted on my Twitch. They'll be hosted on Ready Play Go. There's like a Tales from the Loop game coming up. We're doing a Star Wars relaunch, so there's a lot of stuff in the works, a lot coming from me. But get the damn book. Get Reynolds. I know I said Reynolds. Did I say Roberts? My bad. But hey, you killed it. I want to thank everybody who was here on the show. Thank you for coming by, participating in the chat, doing your thing.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
I will see you guys tomorrow for my stream. And then, like I said, holler at Nikki on Twitter. And, she's always willing to answer questions. So,
well, yeah. And if you're interested in writing and want another, did we? I did.
No, you're good. There was the timer went off for the Switch, and I had to fix it.
Okay. I was just gonna say, if you're interested in writing, I'm always up for storytelling, talking storytelling. I actually have a side business that I didn't get to, but I'm doing developmental editing professionally.
Nice.
I have a website and stuff. I just, with everything launching in the book, I haven't ever put it up yet. But I have been getting work like behind the scenes for that. I like
Get her to do a one-shot.
Bring stories together, right?
I don't know if you want that, Dread. She's a killer GM. Like she's.
No, I don't kill characters.
No, but you're really good. It would have to be more than a one shot because you're super talented as a GM.
I can do one shots.
Can you?
I totally can do one shots.
Right,
absolutely.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it behind the scenes. Now that you got a setup that works. So, all right. You gotta go. You got a kid. You got a husband. They've been generous with the time and not bugging you. All right. I'll talk to you later, kid. Say bye, Nikki.
Bye. Bye.